Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we're going to start with the county commissioners, and I'm going to turn it over to the chair, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Call to order the September 25th, 2024 Nantucket County Commissioners meeting. Next order of business is announcements. The County Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded. And our next order of business is public comment for those items otherwise not on the agenda. Is there anybody here or online with a comment that's not on the agenda tonight? Yeah, and this is for county agenda. I'm assuming you have for select board a public comment? Public comment for select board, correct? Yeah, okay, so when we adjourn, Brooke will take over and then there'll be public comment. Okay, thank you. Next order of business is approval of minutes and warrants. Would accept a motion to approve the minutes of June 26, 2024 and payroll and treasury warrants.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moved by Malcolm, second by Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Item number 6, official business, citizen request follow-up on Article 76 of 2024 annual town meeting, request for town assistance with evictions, quote, housing court, unquote. I think we have town council on tonight for some info and a memo that is in our county commissioner's packet and some follow-up on that and potential decision for the board on how to proceed. John, is there anything you want to introduce or kind of go over what your memo has laid out?
That would be fine, Tom, if you just went through that. I'm here to answer questions, of course.
Great. So yes, I do. Just bring it up. Pardon? So the follow-up to Article 76 is that, as stated in KP Law's memo, is that it will require legislation from the general court to move forward with this. And the decision for us would be to, and there's also a response from the legislative liaison for the rep, for Rep Fernandez, saying that exactly that. So I think our decision would be to request either town council and or Rep Fernandez and Senator Sear, if not Rep Moakley at the time, when he has no opponent in November, so he would be the next state rep, to proceed with legislation. And I think the one takeaway would be that it is complicated and maybe a lengthy process to be able to make that happen. I also spoke to Thomas Moakley today, and he is willing to help work on this. He was an assistant district attorney on the Vineyard and a lawyer, and is very much interested in these issues. So I think if the commissioners agree, and with town council's guidance, that we could move that forward, we could submit a request or submit legislation at appropriate time with House and Senate council's guidance towards attempting to make that happen. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, I have a question. It's in here, it said that the Supreme, what do you say, the court that we have here does the same thing, can handle the same issues? So what's the advantage of housing court? Are they more in tune with this? Is that?
John?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Matt, for that question. I use the term concomitant jurisdiction because both the district court and the Nantucket Superior Court do provide avenues for pursuing issues in other than in the housing court. Um, the advantage of the housing court, in our experience, however, is that because it's a specialized court, the judges tend to be much more attuned to housing issues than perhaps a superior court judge might be. And there's a lot of staff employed by, particularly the Southeast, which you are a member of, um, that they're housing specialists that can assist with particular cases. Um, we have um, brought at least one case in the Southeast Housing Court. And we don't find it particularly burdensome as is. You can e-file your documents. You can, the housing court sits in Barnstable every Wednesday. They send a judge over. So you can schedule your hearings for any Wednesday. Um, that's but we understand that for some people, mainly private citizens, that might be more difficult to do. Whereas we're back and forth all the time on behalf of the town in Barnstable Superior Court, which is where the housing court sits. Um, so the main advantage is the cases tend to move a bit faster. The judges are more in tuned with the housing issues, and they have dedicated court staff um, that can assist in helping to resolve litigation.
So just a couple follow-ups. Is it more, if you don't mind, is it more cost-effective for island residents then through that process versus the district or superior court?
I don't really think it's more cost effective, other than if they have to go over to Barnstable to housing court, obviously they would have the cost. It's an all-day event, obviously, getting over to Barnstable and appearing in the housing court. So if there were a housing court session on Nantucket, Matt, I think it probably, I'm guessing, would be more cost effective for private citizens um, to access the housing court. I'm just making that assumption. Whereas for us, because we can do a lot of business in housing court on behalf of the town, zoning enforcement, code enforcement, um, Title V, zoning appeals, that kind of thing. And for us, it's probably six of one and half a dozen of the other from a cost standpoint.
And then one other question, and then you're all set, Malcolm. There was a sentence that prospect of passage of special legislation requiring the SEHC to hold sessions in Nantucket, given the budgetary issues. I think we're missing a word or two in there. Are you saying that it's right after, in our opinion, in order? It's the second
Yeah.
last paragraph?
Yes, I'm sorry, Matt. What I was attempting to say there is there are significant budgetary issues that the trial court faces, and the housing court is really a division of the trial court. They've been really starved for resources. Um, and so we could certainly file for legislation based upon that town meeting vote seeking an amendment to the statute that set up the Southeast Housing Court. But it's even if it were to pass the legislature, it's not without costs associated with it, and those costs would be borne by the trial court department. So I'm guessing that that's going to be a challenge under the current budgetary um, allocations for the trial court to establish another physical session in the Southeast Housing Court. And the other issue, I think that we have to be cognizant of, if they do it for Nantucket, what would some of the other more remote locations within the Southeast Housing Court whether it be Martha's Vineyard or maybe, they do sit in Barnstable once a week, but there are other locations that may want to have the same favorable treatment. If we pursue this, that's just speculation on my part.
Yeah, so passage is going to be tough, and it would, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think politically it might be tough to accomplish.
Good,
Right.
Matt?
Yeah, I got it.
Good.
Thanks.
Malcolm?
It's okay.
So the pleasure of the board, do we want to make a decision to request this legislation either through town council and/or our legislative delegation?
Yes.
I think if it can expedite housing matters on behalf of the community, I think it's worth trying to do it. I do know that the process currently is long, particularly for property owners and trying to move along evictions, that are appropriate. And I think making that process more accessible for folks would be something worthy of at least an attempt.
Does staff have any feelings one way or the other on this? Is this going to add any, help or hurt, or is it neutral?
I don't think it would really have much to do with us unless there's a space issue.
That's a matter of, is there time and space available in the court
That's a good question.
space? So,
Are there any available days in the court?
Yeah, I think in John's memo here, it says it is a recommendation to speak to the court folks before the legislation is written and filed. I think that would, yes, Erica?
I would just say, in dealing with the court schedule a lot this year with the window project at the town building, the courtroom is in session a lot. Not to say that there aren't days here and there, but I don't know if it would be weekly.
Or a regular day, maybe? Yeah.
well, and I wonder if they say, okay, we'll come quarterly, right? Then you have to wait 3 months. Whereas if you did it through the Superior Court, it would happen more quickly. So, I mean, I guess, who's going to do the further investigation, I guess? Where does that responsibility stand? Is that something the legislative delegation is willing to, Thomas is willing to help us with?
Yes, that
Okay.
is, and I feel confident in my conversation with him that he was interested in taking a look at drafting this legislation with probably town council's help and our help, or our input, and trying to move this forward.
I think it's worthy of more investigation. So I would make that motion, that we pursue it with our legislative delegation and see where it goes.
Sounds good. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Brooke, second by Malcolm. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Commissioners' reports, comments? Any commissioners have any comments this evening? No? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Brooke, second by Malcolm. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Madam Chair?
Okay. So I'm going to call the September 25th Select Board meeting to order at this time. We will accept the agenda as printed. And before we start announcements, I want to remind folks that if you're cross-talking with one another in the audience, it echoes right down here and is very distracting for the board. So please try to not have side conversations or step out into the hallway if you would like to do so. Thank you for that. Libby, do you want to take announcements?
Sure. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. And as I think was mentioned last week, the Town Council Study Committee will be holding public forums on the proposed new Town Council form of government on a couple of upcoming dates, Saturday, October 5th at 10 a.m. and Thursday, October 10th at 5:30 p.m. Both meetings will be hybrid with in person at this room at 4 Fairgrounds Road, public Safety Community Room and remote via the Zoom webinar. And the Zoom webinar link is online.
Okay. I have a bunch of announcements. Anyone else have anything? Any comments or announcements? Okay, you guys are going to get tired of hearing my voice tonight. There's a lot going on. So I have a number of updates. The first will be on the North Atlantic right whale speed restrictions. And town administration, the select board, and community groups have continued to lobby for an exemption for Nantucket Sound to avoid the devastating impact these restrictions would have on our ferry services. Excuse me. Last week, the Office of Coastal Zone Management formally objected to these restrictions, citing the town of Nantucket and others' concerns regarding the lack of documented whale sightings in Nantucket Sound, the economic impacts to the island, and safety concerns for all vessels, and the general lack of information supplied by NOAA to support the rule. CZM also incorporated the town's request that Nantucket Sound should be exempted from the proposed rule. This is only one step of a larger administrative process that goes into reviewing a proposed federal government rule, but it is certainly useful that CZM has endorsed the town's position. We will continue to monitor the process and let the community know if there are any future opportunities to offer personal testimony on the damage that this proposal would cause. Okay. We've had a lot of inquiries this week about folks who serve on town boards and committees and their social media posts. And I just wanted to read a statement that we received. This has come up before, and I will reiterate that we've been advised by town council that the code of conduct that is signed by people who serve on boards and committees should not be interpreted to allow for disciplinary action against board members when they're engaged in private speech, and that any disciplinary action that the select board might pursue would raise significant constitutional concerns given the protections afforded individuals under the First Amendment, as well as due process protections enshrined in the Constitution. And I just hope that clarifies what the select board may or may not do with regard to folks' personal activities on social media as they serve on boards and committees. Were comments made in a public meeting or in their role on the board or committee, that would be a different thing, but private speech is well protected by the Constitution. So we just want to clarify that. Tonight in our pending contracts, we have an engagement of cultural heritage partners. And I just wanted to read a statement about that and sort of update where we are.
Do you want to do that one last? Because it's on the agenda later on.
Okay, so I can do that at that time. Okay, I'll do it at that when we do, but, okay. It kind of all wraps together, Erica. I'm just going to do it now. So, okay. So the select board has engaged Cultural Heritage Partners, the town's special counsel for offshore wind concerns, to pursue legal claims arising from the Vineyard Wind GE Vernova blade failure, which occurred on July 13th, 2024, as well as subsequent and ongoing resultant damages and risk. CHP has also been engaged to assist the town in responding to 3 emerging wind projects in addition to the existing Vineyard Wind project. While the board is open to public comment concerning offshore wind issues, we will not be answering questions concerning the substance of settlement-related communications with Vineyard Wind or GE Vernova, as that could compromise the town's negotiating position and adversely affect our ability to obtain the best outcome possible for Nantucket and its residents, businesses, and visitors. In the event an agreement is reached, it would be voted and ratified in open session and made public. Excuse me, I'm sorry, got a little bit of a cold. So I do have some sort of general updates on the status of what's going on in the legal processes. So with regard to the Good Neighbor Agreement, conversations are ongoing and active with Vineyard Wind's attorneys concerning issues and supplemental protections that the town would like Vineyard Wind to address. And these discussions are required to remain confidential, and that protection is intended to promote open and honest discussion during dispute resolution. And then with regard to the turbine blade failure, we continue to research potential damages to the town and its economy and have secured an independent expert to assist us with this valuation. Conversations are ongoing and active with Vineyard Wind and GE Vernova's attorneys concerning issues and supplemental protections that the town would like Vineyard Wind to address. That sounds a little repetitive, sorry, it's been a long day. And then with regard to the additional wind farms, there are several other offshore wind farms on the horizon, summaries of which are listed on the town's offshore wind website: South Coast Wind, Revolution Wind 2, formerly Bay State Wind, and Beacon Wind. As we have explained previously, the town continues to monitor these projects with the assistance and advocacy of cultural heritage partners. The town will continue to participate in ongoing and upcoming permitting reviews by BOEM and will appeal BOEM's decisions if necessary and if in the town's best interests. Every single document the town submits to BOEM or other entities advancing our concerns and interest is posted on the town website, as well as contact information for state and federal officials, whom we encourage residents and property owners to contact to express their concerns. Okay, community impact fee. We did get an update from town council regarding the implementation of the community impact fee on short-term rentals for multiple people who manage multiple short-term rental properties. And I'm just going to read this statement. It is necessary to update the former memorandum that had been sent by town council. This update involves the question whether the community impact fee must be remitted to the Department of Revenue for all rental contracts that commence on or after October 1st, 2024, or is only applicable to rental contracts signed on or after October 1st, 2024. This is John Giorgio speaking. After I sent this memorandum to you and the discussion that took place at the select board meeting on September 18th, the Department of Revenue has issued a statement in response to an inquiry through Mass Tax Connect, in which the Department of Revenue states that the community impact fee is effective October 1st, 2024, irrespective of when the rental contract was signed. So that means any rentals that start on or after October 1st are subject to the community impact fee, if they're subject to it. That's the timeline. While I indicated at the select board meeting that the applicability of the community impact fee was subject to interpretation, now that the DOR has subsequently issued its guidance, I recommend that the town inform short-term rental operators of the DOR position on this matter, because the DOR has the statutory authority to administer general laws, Chapter 64G. Operators should therefore comply with the DOR directive by collecting and remitting the community impact fee to the Department of Revenue on all rental contracts that commence on or after October 1st, 2024. If any operator wishes to contest this guidance, they should do so directly through the Department of Revenue Mass Connect. Okay, and finally, with regard to the ICE arrests, recent ICE arrests. The Town of Nantucket Select Board and Municipal Administration are aware of the recent arrests made by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, on the island. We recognize that this activity may have been unsettling to many of our residents. It is our understanding that ICE action was not random, but targeted toward the arrest of 4 known individuals who committed violent crimes on Nantucket. Let me be clear, we are committed to the safety and well-being of members of our community, regardless of their immigration status, and are relieved that these offenders have been apprehended by the appropriate authorities and are no longer a threat to our community. We stand in support of the victims of these traumatic crimes and their families, and the town will make available any resources and counseling services they might need. Okay, thank you for listening to all of that. We don't have any follow-up comments from prior select board meetings, so I will now open public comment for items not on the agenda tonight. Val?
I'm just going to ask a question. Will we be able to speak about the select board executive session about Vineyard Wind, or we're not allowed to when that comes up?
You're,
The last agenda item.
hang on one second. Yeah, you'll be able to, I'll take comments.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Gail? We need you to come to the mic.
I don't need the mic.
Gail, you actually do, because people online can't hear. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gail Holgate. It's been 4 months since I stood before you and spoke about Article 36. It's the appropriation for an investigation of the African Meeting House, the hate crime. And this isn't going to go away. So the motion was given and voted on to transfer $60,000 from free cash to hire an investigative team. I was the one that drafted the initial motion, which we now know I know that it was modified. We also have been informed that the investigative team we voted on will not be put in place to oversee the investigation. So today I'm asking for specifics. First, a copy of the request, a final copy of the request for proposal, before it goes out to bid, to ensure a candidate chosen is not related to or work for the town. Second, when will that proposal be completed, and a timeline to given of the investigation from start to finish?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll get back to you.
Good evening. My name again is Barbara Burgo. I am the former chair of the Barnstable County Human Rights Commission, a former 10-year board member of South Coastal County's Legal Services, and I live in Brewster, but I am here again as a person who might have been one of the folks to help investigate the hate crime on the African Meeting House. Again, as Gail just said, this is not going to go away. But for me, more's the pity. As saying goes, I'm here at public comment because the last time I was going to address this board, an African Meeting House racial slur investigation, which photo is included in your packet that Gail just gave you, including the phallic symbol that was on that meeting house 6 years ago. I feel it's time we took a look at what is really happening because it's been so long. You remember that the African Meeting House, the Article 36, was put at the end of the agenda, as it was the time before that. That, by the way, is a customary tactic which the board has used very frequently on both July and August select board meetings that I have attended. It is a microaggression well known to cultural anthropologists and civil human rights professionals like myself. Black folks and issues have been put at the back of the bus, so to speak, or the end of the agenda on several occasions for centuries. I am not surprised, but I'm quite disappointed. So what I have done this time to get in before my ferry leaves is to take a picture again and put it in the packet in case my time runs out, of the racial slur on the African Meeting House 6 years ago. Included also in the packet is a picture of the memorial for Mr. Barrow's son, who passed away shortly after that. Also in the packet is the memorial for Mr. William Bill Ducamo, who we had hoped would be on this committee, and he passed away earlier this year. So I was hoping to come today and find it on the agenda, how we are going to continue and get this behind us, if you will. But it is not again. So this is to urge you before somebody else dies to please take this seriously. Please put it at the front of the agenda maybe the next time. And please get some action going in a fair and impartial group to investigate this. I would like to volunteer my time since you said we couldn't be paid. And I have another volunteer member who would like to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 hands online. Megan Perry?
Thank you, Brooke. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Excellent. I just wanted to thank the whole community for a job well done at town meeting or special town meeting. I thought it was great. We got through things in somewhat of a timely manner. And so I wanted to thank everybody who attended for that. I was a little bit disappointed to hear some snickering and borderline harassment comments from some board members up front of various boards when members of the public were speaking, but I guess I understand why. Again, just wanted to thank the community for that. And then I was wondering, when you guys are discussing approvals, the Richmond property leases, could you go over that instead of just approving them all? Could you explain?
Megan?
Yes.
Megan, that's on the agenda. We will go over it.
I just didn't know if you were going to go over it because it's in a section that just,
I'm just letting you know we are.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So those are my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Campbell Sutton?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely. Okay.
Try again.
Okay, is that any better?
A little bit better. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll just get closer. Hopefully that'll work. I too wanted to thank everyone for coming to town meeting and taking the time out of their busy schedules to voice their opinions in whichever way they went. I also wanted to thank all the people that worked on the short-term rental, Nantucket vacation rental concepts. I think a lot of work went into that. As everyone probably knows, I was a little disappointed that we didn't have any progress and that the number of articles just allowed votes to be watered down. So I thought that was unfortunate. I sort of got to thinking about it, and I really had to wonder. I think we need to look at the basic question, which I think Article 1 and Article 2 address differently, is are we looking to have short-term rentals or Nantucket vacation rentals as a primary use or a secondary use? I think we need to come together as a group on that before we really can move forward. And I don't mean just the select board or just the people that were on it. I think all the voters need to, in some way, we need to figure out how to get a consensus around, are we looking for primary use? Or are we looking for accessory use? If we're looking, and then decide, okay, how do we want to do that? Then I had this really crazy pants idea. Is there any way where we do both, where we allow primary and accessory, maybe in different zones or with different parameters, depending on what the people want to do? Sounds nuts, but maybe if you can't have black or white, gray works, I'm not sure. And just finally and quickly, I guess I had hoped that with this African Meeting House thing, that a process would come forward whereby people would feel satisfied and not ripped off, or, justice delayed or denied. I was really hoping we would move forward with something that, everyone could get behind and support. So I just wanted to say that since it had just come up. And thank all of you for your time tonight. And
Thanks, Campbell. And Meredith Lepre.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thanks. So I thought town meeting was great, but I am really disappointed in the select board and town administration to not be taking a stand when a member of the FinCom, the vice chair, is doxing, which maybe people don't know what that is, but it is a type of cyberbullying. And you are allowing that to happen to community members who disagreed with his action. Now, maybe you're okay with that because you wanted the housing and that was upsetting to people that the housing didn't go through. But I am really, really disgusted that there was no action taken when the vice chair of the FinCom posted the pictures and addresses, home addresses of community members just because they didn't agree with his article. Now, I think that you all might feel a little bit differently if it was your picture and your home address that was posted on Instagram and Facebook and allowed for anyone in the public to see. I don't think that you would appreciate that. So I really would love to know for next week how you would all feel if you were doxxed and your personal information was released on purpose to all of Nantucket to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on. There's no new business that I'm aware of. And next up, I would take a motion for approval of the September 18th minutes and payroll warrants and treasury warrants, those three combined.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. And then I'll open the pending contracts, and I know we've had some questions about the Richmond Great Point contracts. So Christie's going to give us a rundown.
Thank you. So Christy Ferrantella, the housing director for the town. So the execution of these leases with the Richmond development are part of the overall package that we've been negotiating with Richmond in their Gooseberry Place 2 development. The overall development is 55 units of rentals, in which originally only 25% were restricted to affordable rentals and 75% were market. The Affordable Housing Trust negotiated with Richmond and provided a grant to buy down market rate units, and now 50% of the units are restricted to affordable levels between 80% and 120% of AMI. And in that, we negotiated for 10 of the market rate units to be utilized through a master lease to the town to be used for municipal employee housing. This overall negotiation and grant was approved by the Affordable Housing Trust at their April 30th meeting and approved by the Select Board at their June 5th meeting. Richmond is finalizing the development of these projects. I actually was just on site today, and they're in really good shape and ready for COs. And so the part of the execution of this is when they're ready to move in, we'll be able to move year-round full-time employees into these units. The lease is held with the town of Nantucket, and then employees would pay a license fee and utilities for the units. The goal of the program is to provide stable year-round housing for our staff, and we've been able to negotiate that the town could have an option to renew up to 5 years on this master lease. So it's a lot of the leases that we've done are for 1 year, and that's not providing long-term solutions for our employees. And so this was a really big win for the housing office and the select board and the trust to be able to negotiate this. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board or the community has.
Matt?
Is there do these increase cost of living or anything every year, or are these set?
So they increase every year with Richmond, and we've negotiated that it'll increase when we begin our lease at that 1 year mark. So the rent wouldn't increase when they're doing, all the affordable rates increase in April when they release the new AMI information. So this wouldn't go into effect in April. It'll be at the end of a lease when we go to renew that rates would be changed.
Right. And what is that based, did you guys agree on what it was based upon? Or?
Most of the time we've seen in other Richmond units that we've rented, it's between 3% and 4% of an increase.
Okay, because I've done leases that have been, cost of living or 2% or cost of living or 3%. something like that. So both parties knew ahead of time. I think, anyone else have questions?
Anybody else? Are there any questions? I did say I would take questions from the public at this time if you.
I have one question, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
sorry, Malcolm, go ahead.
For the Hopper Marine Ecosystem Research, $700, almost $800,000. And I'm sure it was all done in good faith, but I couldn't find any information about that company at least on the internet. And all I could find is they were incorporated last June, which means I'd like to think they're the right company for this, but they seem to be new. I may be wrong. I just don't like voting on $800,000 without knowing much about it. And I'm sorry, Libby, I didn't get to this sooner, but I did this afternoon.
Jeff Carlson's hand is up. I'm assuming he's prepared to respond.
Yes, good evening, everyone. How are you guys tonight? Just to comment on the Hooper Marine. Hooper Marine is our researcher who we've been working with since 2018, 2019, Dr. Stephen Heck. And he incorporated of himself. He finished up at the university he was at and started his own LLC, but it's the same team we've had since the inception of this project.
Thank you, Jeff. That makes me feel a lot better. Because if you look at it on the surface, it looks like it's a brand new company. But thank you.
That's good. Okay. Megan's hand is up. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Brooke. Could you just explain to me, I think I probably missed it, where exactly the funding for the Richmond leases is coming from? And I'm sorry if I missed it at one of the many meetings it was probably discussed at. If you wouldn't mind answering that, that would be great.
Christy?
Yep, I'm happy to answer. So this comes out of the housing budget. And what we do with all of the leases that we do on behalf of the town is our contract basically says the full amount of the rent, but the employees pay a license fee that returns those fees. So the net is next to nothing for the town. We're being the landlord in exchange to secure the units for our employees.
Okay, great.
I have a couple of questions.
Yep, Matt.
SMRT, on-call 40,000. What does that mean?
That's for oversight of the dorm work.
But we have a contract with them, so this is a different time? Is this just,
Well,
okay.
yeah, it's if needed, but we don't already have a contract with them for this.
Oh, we don't, all right, all right, so I'm good there. And the other one was the turf equipment maintenance. Can someone address that? We had turf equipment originally. Have we been?
It's replacement turf equipment that
Yeah, I
think
figured it was
the
replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how much? Yeah, how much was the original used? Was it stored outside, and that's why it's no good, or what's the rundown?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty versatile piece of equipment to maintain delta fields, Nobodere, et cetera. Yeah, and I think you had a question recently about a storage container for those facilities, so it's just at the end of its life, and it's a replacement.
Got it. I'm good. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous. Okay. Okay, next up is applicant introduction and review of applications and appointments to the Conservation Commission, and we have both applicants present. Would you gentlemen like to say a few words to the board before we take a vote? Who wants to go first?
Thank you, Chair Moore. My name is RJ Turcott, and I'm applying for the vacant seat on the Nantucket Conservation Commission. I am not going to speak to my qualifications or expertise this evening. I'm just going to speak to why I threw my hat in the ring. I have been for 5 years now going to the Conservation Commission meetings and watching this commission in particular sort of get crushed under an avalanche of weight of notices of intent and certificates of compliance and what have you. I'm from a town called Millbury, and we might have 20 notices of intent in a year, and that's on one single agenda for these 7 volunteers. And there's always been, at least in my time out here, a dearth of applicants. And this is my area of expertise, and so I really wanted to throw my hat in the ring and see if I could help, not only with reviewing projects that are coming in, but also trying to help Jeff and Will and the rest of the NRD staff with sort of making some systemic changes to the Conservation Commission, some things that'll make things run a little more smoothly for anyone who comes after us who has such a workload. So obviously I work for the Land and Water Council, and I have for 5 years, so I had to meet with, in the weeks leading up to the deadline, our council to figure out how I could do that and be a commissioner still, or work for them and be a commissioner, and spent a lot of time going through, and I have copies of the Chapter 268 disclosure form. So basically, any projects I had commented on in the past for the Land and Water Council, I'd be recused from permanently. And if the Land and Water Council decided they wanted to write a letter, as they often do, and I've written many, I would recuse from those projects going forward. So I sort of hammered it out with legal counsel how it would work, and it's not very different from any of the other boards who have clients who come in and they recuse themselves from that said project. But also ringing in my ears is Marianne Stanton from Here and There saying young people should get more involved in town boards and committees. So here I am. I'd like to try and give back to a town that I've been living in for a while now and really love. And with that, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Any questions? Thanks for addressing your employer clearly for us. Thanks. Grant?
Are they going to miss you if you can't comment from the other side? Yeah, so.
I'm sure they'll find someone.
Grant Sanders, thank you. I will speak to my qualifications. I don't have any, really. I don't have what RJ has. And I think what you have here is a real contrast. I'm here because a few people in the community got in contact with me and said, we really need somebody like you on Concom. And so, had they not done that, it wasn't even on my radar screen. But I've met with RJ. I think, he and I bring different things to the task, and there's no skin off my nose if you vote RJ in, and if you vote me in, I will serve happily for the remainder of this term, because I love this island and I want to take care of it. So thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Okay, so we'll each, if there aren't any other questions.
Yeah, I want to disclose that Grant is married to my sister Barry, but it will not have an impact on my vote.
I trust you, Matt.
Yeah.
The vote was unanimous. All 4 select board members voted for RJ Turcotte. So appointed.
Thank you, Grant, for applying and stepping up. Thank you, RJ, and congratulations. And I echo RJ's comment or quotation of Marianne Stanton's comment about young people getting involved in town government. We really need you out there, everybody. So make fewer gray-haired people would be great. Okay, thanks. Okay, next up is request for waiver of sewer connection permit fee and sewer capacity fees for a covenant lot located at 10 Field Avenue. Christie, you going to walk us through this, please?
So the request before you is for a covenant lot that is the new homeowner is requesting a waiver. The recommendation is a 50% reduction on the capacity fee and 100% waiver on the connection fee. And that's in line with the board's policy and what you guys have executed in the past.
Any questions from the board or a motion?
It's within our policy. I move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thanks, Christie. Okay, real estate matters. I'm not going to read this out loud. Tracy, you want to go?
Thank you, Tracy McDonald, the real estate specialist. So I'm here tonight to happily be presenting this request for conveyance of an unconstructed portion of the paper roads on Clifford Street and Pocomo Ave, shown as Parcel A on Land Court Plan 34745-B, with a positive vote of Article 77 at the 2010 town meeting. This is another yard sale parcel that has been in the deep backlog of old RFPs and was awarded to the abutter in 2011. It has been stuck in what we affectionately call the land court limbo and was finally issued land court approval in June. In July, it received a favorable REAC recommendation, and in September, I received a no-risk coastal resilience assessment. Town council, in conjunction with the abutters council, drafted and reviewed the documents as usual, and I'm asking the board to approve and execute this conveyance of Parcel A to Mr. Fawcett.
Any questions from the board or a pleasure?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for shepherding these things through. Okay.
I
and now
love
you're
to
gonna
dig
give us
into the archive ones and get them done.
Yeah. And now you're going to give us a review of the art sale program in general for the public's information and for an update for us. Thank you.
Yes, I am. I am going to give you a riveting presentation on yard sales. So I'm going to start with a history from 2003 to present. The program began in 2003 with an idea that paper roads in Nantucket, which are roads shown on a plan but in reality have not been constructed, could add value to the tax roll and other public purposes through taking by eminent domain and disposition. Initially, this process was intended to preserve access points for popular beaches around the island that were legally reserved as private roads or ways. As development escalated, the planning department began to see the value in taking these unconstructed roads and conveying them to the abutters in exchange for pedestrian and beach access, which became known as the One Big Beach program. Thereafter, the program evolved into taking paper roads and conveying them to abutters if the town did not have a public purpose for them and could vote the parcel as surplus. Those parcels disposed between 2007 and 2012 were offered through an RFP process, through which an abutter could submit a bid to the town for a potential surplus parcel with certain conditions. During that time period, it was discovered that parcels taken that abut land court registered land had to go through land court for plan approval and issuance of a certificate of title in the name of the town prior to the ability to convey. This was an added cumbersome step for staff and required town council to file petitions in land court. Land court is historically a slow process and requires the assignment of a land court examiner to examine the title before approval. Although many petitions have no issues, sometimes during this process, title problems arise which can require significant work to resolve. Some examples of this are tax title, prescriptive easements, and rights of others. From 2012 to the present, surplus parcels have been disposed using a price factor, and in the case of paper roads, the abutter has the right to the midline and therefore is offered the opportunity for acquisition. In some cases, if they decline, other abutters may have the option for the parcel. If the parcel is large enough that the price factor yields a price over $35,000, then by mass law, the town must utilize the RFP process. Price factor is determined with a formula based on several criteria, monitored by the town assessor and then further reviewed by the Real Estate Assessment Committee. Tracking of increased square footage entering the tax roll, additional ground cover value, and total income produced by the program were carefully tracked up till 2015. Thereafter, due to staffing turnover and the COVID years, accurate tracking and the completion of conveyances has been inconsistent. However, the inventory continues to rise, with new requests on every town meeting warrant via citizen petition, while the backlog remains considerable. The chart provided, Erica, could you put up my 2024 chart? So, no, this is the checklist, but there's a chart. Yes, that's kind of hard to see. So these are the 2024 yard sale conveyances we've done for this year so far. Hold on, I've lost my spot now. Okay, so the chart provided shows the 2024 conveyances, added ground cover, and totals for 2024. At the May 2024 town meeting, 3 private sponsored articles passed and 9 articles for public purpose passed. So those are added now to the list. In 2022, my predecessor reported that the program had so far yielded an estimated $10 million of value and 36 separate One Big Beach easements. Remember, even when there is a public purpose and no monetary consideration is exchanged, there is still value in the conveyance, though difficult to measure. I hope to be able to create a database with viable confirmed data over the course of the next year. Some changes and challenges that we've faced in the program. As the issues facing Nantucket have evolved over the past 10 years, so has the yard sale program. The motive and the success of the program have changed. Public or essential purpose has evolved due to coastal resilience planning, climate change issues, and increased development, and the need for taking remaining paper roads has in some cases become essential for private homeowners to relocate their septic system or well or move their home. And for the town, public purposes may be emergency access, pedestrian or bike paths, road relocation, or conservation mitigation. The program is a multi-step, complicated process involving many professionals, including town planning, town staff, private surveyors and engineers, attorneys, and town council. In some cases, this involves negotiating with a homeowner for a parcel in exchange for crucial easements. In addition, title issues, easements, and other complications have to be resolved or addressed prior to the conveyance. For surplus parcels, the entire financial burden and process must be facilitated by the beneficiary property owner. This has been a miscommunication in the past, and I have spoken to numerous property owners who have expected the town to be facilitating the entire process and feel that years have been wasted with them not knowing or provided a clear explanation. The reason for this is how complicated the process is and the nuances of the program that can be difficult for staff to explain why it is so time-consuming. All right, so scroll up now to the other. So my goals are this. Shown on the screen is a proposed draft checklist created in conjunction with the Real Estate Assessment Committee to act as a guide for the public in working through the process and a guide for staff on status and tracking. The suggestion is to front-load a coordinated review that includes title, planning, coastal resilience considerations, and REAC recommendations in order to avoid the complications, manage expectations and communication, and timing throughout the process, as well as identifying the parcel as essential or non-essential purpose. This is meant to be a guideline. Citizen sponsors of a town meeting article should keep in mind positive vote is authorization only. It does not require action, nor does it involve a timeline. It puts the sponsor in a queue with many others, some of which have been on the list for over 15 years for various reasons. Matters sponsored by town that are for essential purpose may advance forward more quickly than others. The beneficiary must engage an engineer to create and file a plan with the planning board, and an attorney must shepherd them through the process at their expense. The town does not facilitate these processes or undertake the financial burden unless there is essential public purpose. It is up to the requesting party to arrange for the taking and disposition plan and request the taking with the town. This is a municipal process and a complicated program coordinated in partnership with real estate professionals, surveyors, and attorneys. However, they should not be establishing program expectations, but should work in cooperation with the town to help the process for the benefit of both the town and the public. In summary, I'm committed over the next year to work with the Real Estate Assessment Committee, Town Council, local attorneys, the Land Court, and the Select Board to tackle the enormous backlog of takings and conveyances already authorized and in process. I am working on a database to accurately track the revenue stream and square footage, and I am also identifying the parcels that have unresolvable title issues and are unable to be conveyed. Land Court is motivated to move petitions forward, and I am optimistic existing petitions will receive approval and be able to be scheduled for conveyance. I'm working with Town Council to revive petitions that were discontinued during COVID and submit new petitions that have been awaiting that part of the process. I generally spend about 5 to 10 hours a week on yard sale matters, while focusing on other higher priority matters for the town, including takings and easements for infrastructure projects, encroachments, licenses, lease matters, supporting affordable housing and other departments with legal research and questions, and any other matters related to municipal real estate. However, this is a monster backlog list that a few hours a week will not resolve. To truly make meaningful progress will require larger commitment, including assenting for local attorneys to act as co-counsel for land court petition filings to track and facilitate that process on behalf of their clients. The sales price of the parcel at the time of the conveyance likely does not cover the cost of the time put in, especially for those parcels that were bid over 10 to 15 years ago in an RFP, like the one the board considered tonight, which took an enormous amount of work on the part of Town Council and myself, together with others involved, for a 12,000 square foot parcel, stuck in land court for years and conveyed today for $5,000. The current price factor in this area is $2 a square foot and would have yielded $24,000. Even so, the program is more than just a financial bottom line. There is often a higher purpose for the town, including coastal resilience planning, ability to trade parcels for securing easements, beach access, pedestrian and emergency access, mitigation, and additional taxes. Alternatively, the non-essential purposes for ground cover allowance may increase septic system capacities or locations, building expansion, or other potential benefits that generate fees for the town, and also increase the tax roll. I hope the board finds this information helpful, and I welcome your questions and thoughts on any improvements.
Thank you. That was great.
It was a lot. I know.
A lot. It's a lot of information.
It feels like a lot to me.
Super helpful for me. Any questions or comments from the board? Tom?
Tracy, how long did it take you to edit that down?
Actually, it wasn't too bad. I have a good handle on it, and Libby helped.
Very good, thank you.
Yes.
Nothing?
I think I finally understand.
Matt?
Yeah, do you have a list of outstanding? How many there are, do you know? I know we asked for that a number of years ago and we haven't really.
So Linnell Vollins did a really comprehensive list up to 2015, which is fully, I believe, fully accurate. Thereafter, it's about 6 or 7 different spreadsheets done by different people that I need to pull together. And there's a lot missing during that time, so I have to back it out through warrant article meeting votes and all that.
Yeah, because just for everyone's, for the public and for the board's education, at one point, and Libby might remember the year, we put this on hold and said, let's just finish the existing, because we realized we weren't making money from the program. It was costing way more time and effort for staff than we were getting back from it. And it doesn't, and so we did put it on hold, but it kind of, there's such financial incentive. It seems to have a mind of its own now. and a momentum of its own that I think we have to decide whether we want to be doing that. And so that's one. And then who is going to decide, because once we make a vote at town, once someone puts it at town meeting and they have the vote, and you guys both address this, but I'm going to try to make it clearer so someone like myself could figure it out, is once we have a vote, people will be, they have expectations. They think that town meeting voted, and that's that's our governing body, therefore we want to do this. And the vote is only authorizing us maybe to do it if we decide it's worth doing. And so, but once it starts, you can't stop it. And so I think your idea of putting things ahead, maybe is a good one if we're even going to continue at this level. I have
Exactly.
questions.
So most of the time when a butter is interested in a paper road and closing it up, sometimes that's a group of abutters that abut the road, they'll go to planning first and have a discussion. So the idea of the front loading will be that we'll catch it then, we'll be able to fully review it prior to them submitting their warrant article. And then when we get to our recommendation process of, we're going to make a positive recommendation or no recommendation, then, that will you'll have all that information up front at town meeting. And then going forward, the process is controlled to some extent because the burden is on those abutters to create the plan for taking a disposition. We still have to do the taking, and that slows it down a little bit because that's based on our timeline. And we are dividing the list between essential and non-essential. We do have, as I pointed out, there were 9 public purpose yard sale matters for various reasons on this year's warrant. And that far outweighed the 3 private citizen ones. So I think it could naturally slow down. And there is a lot of the backlog that's problematic that will need to be weeded out.
Because I think we've identified, certain purposes, like we've added coastal resiliency, but I think there are things like walking paths and bike paths and other areas that we're gonna, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we're gonna need, and we're gonna have to come back. If we've given this and sold this, we're gonna have to come back and do a taking and pay, 10 times more than we sold it for. So there's certain things like that we aren't even thinking about. I'm just using those as 2 examples.
So there
We
are,
should be we have to be more proactive and look ahead.
So there are active areas where we've taken it. We just haven't negotiated the easement or conveyed. So they're kind of in a holding pattern. So they're protected. And we just need to then, work out the details for the pedestrian access or whatever it's going to be. But I think I've reviewed all the access points. And there are many, many, many that have been taken.
Right.
And are secure.
But my point is, there's things we don't even know about that we may want to connect. Kind of like at one point, we were getting ready to give, to sell completely a piece of a road in Surfside that all the neighbors used. And or we even conveyed one they all used, and the person said, well, okay, I'll let you do it. But I think there's going to be things like that we're going to want in the future, that we have to be careful as a town that we haven't inadvertently sold and given away.
Exactly.
And have to get it back again. That's kind of my point. And the only other comment is, this did sort of come out of One Big Beach, but this wasn't the idea of One Big Beach. The idea of One Big Beach wasn't that we'd be swapping. It became a swap situation in Surfside in order to allow people to stay on the beaches there. The idea of One Big Beach initially was that, as a town for 150, 200 years, we've contended that we've owned up to the high tide, not down to the low. And that's, sort of town meetings in the 1800s and the early 1900s asserted that. We were part of New York, not Massachusetts, when those changes happened, and we weren't bound by them. It would be very expensive to litigate and prove that. And every time land court's a property, we lose that if we haven't asserted our rights, which we haven't. And so what the idea of One Big Beach was to use the fact that people could give easements for that portion. They could take that off their tax purposes and we would get it. So the idea wasn't to be a trade between, oh, you get to close this path next to your house or close this potential road. The idea was you get to give something that you really don't own already, get a big benefit for it, and we would continue to have open beaches all the way around the island. And that was the initial sort of vision of that program. It has morphed into sort of what we're dealing with now. So anyway, someday I have I've got a file with all this. Someday I'll come give it to you.
Yes, exactly.
Sometime I'll bring it
And
by.
like I said, we can continue to work on it and
Yeah.
improve it and address those issues.
Yeah. So I would say in terms of allocation of staff time resources, that we should, this prioritization of what has public benefit, obviously, those need to be prioritized over ones that are simply for private benefit. So in my mind, we have limited, you have a lot of work to do on other matters. So, and I think we really need to, I think what you're talking about will really help manage people's expectations that, and also not get the cart before the horse, which is the warrant articles for a property that's never going to qualify or has flaws in the title or whatever it is, that it's never going to come to fruition, and sort of bypass those before that town meeting vote expectation gets on in people's minds. So.
But the follow-up on that, the hard part is until you've researched the deed and researched the property, you don't know whether it has those issues or not. And, so it's.
Except for I can do that.
Yeah, well, so maybe we do that, and maybe the ones going to town meeting get a recommendation. It's a public purpose, maybe we recommend it. If it's not, we say no, so that the expectations are not, that this is full speed ahead.
Well, and I think involving REAC at the front versus the end process where we are here is more valuable, because a lot of these things they will be able to make recommendations on.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Rocky, update on short-term rental registration program.
Rocky Miramontes, Public Health Director, Town of Nantucket. There are currently 283 registered and paid short-term rental registrations in our electronic system. So this number differs substantially from the number of registered units in the state short-term rental database, which appears to be closer to 2,000. In August, GovOS, which is the owner of the software registration product, provided an additional list of 933 short-term rental or potential short-term rentals for us for outreach. Now, it's difficult to pinpoint the exact number of unique units from the state database alone because that system is additive. So properties do not drop off. For instance, when the property has been sold, it is therefore possible for the same STR to be listed more than once with different owners. Now, the town has been working with Process First to help facilitate a merging of data from the state system, as well as from available websites to capture the most accurate data into our local system. With that information, we can then increase outreach to property owners to help improve registration compliance. Now, recent challenges to our process and goal are not completely unexpected, considering this often occurs when you're standing up a new electronic system. This one has been in existence only since March of '24. GovOS has received 238 phone calls to their support service from persons requesting assistance. I do not have the status as to whether or not those were all addressed, but that is the most recent number that we have received. On the town's end, there are steps that must occur to ensure properties are verified before the registration can be completed. Now, this adds additional workload to the health department staff that was initially unanticipated. As an additional service, health department staff have been working directly with short-term rental owners to help them through the registration process. And by seeing the registration process from the short-term rental owner's perspective, that has helped us to gather information that will improve the final product, or as the product is improved. One final challenge recently came to light. Short-term rental regulations 123 and 338 both refer to registration of short-term rentals needing to be done each year by November the 1st. However, it is unclear to the property owners whether the registration fee applies to the current year, which just passed for the season, or it applies to the upcoming season. Now, this topic has been raised with the Board of Health, and there are discussions on the best way to clarify that language. And we look forward to keeping the Select Board apprised of the town's progress in this area. Take any questions.
Okay. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I have more of a comment than a question. Again, I think we should begin thinking about whether this task belongs with the health department. It is not a health issue. And as Roberto used to say, the only health issues he had was with long-term rentals and not short-term rentals. Because it's really taking them away from what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Malcolm. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks, Rocky.
Thanks.
Okay, Drew? We're going to get an update on the proposed DPW facility. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back and do that. Hang on, guys, just a second. Thanks, Erica. Rebecca?
Thank you, Brooke. Hope I can take a few minutes. As you know, I've been an advocate for the short-term rental registration process, and also haven't been shy about raising issues when I saw the need. First, welcome Director Miramontes to one of the most interesting challenges in the intersection between administering things that have to do with the welfare of the island, but also the political disagreements about the future of the island. First, I'd like to commend Finance Director Brian Turbot, former Health Director Santa Maria, and the Health Department staff for getting the system up and running. I think they've done an amazing job battling through a lot of challenges. I do want to raise some questions and suggestions. I appreciate what Director Miramontes had said about the outreach program. I'd like to strongly recommend that the town begin to actually publicize using public service announcements through local media and potentially working through real estate agencies and platforms to get the word out to say, hey, this deadline is upon us. I think most of us who've been tracking this for a while understood the November 1st deadline to be registration for next year, which I believe Director Santa Maria and Brian Turbot talked about in previous select board meetings. But publicize the registration deadline, where to go for more information. We do know that there are some short-term rental operators that are not easy to find in the online web platforms. So this would, basically run a flag up the flagpole to say, hey, if you haven't gotten an invitation to register, please do so by the deadline. We're also hearing, and this reflects some of the things that are coming in as questions to the Nantucket Together organization, that short-term rental operators are seeking clarification on a number of important topics. One was certainly the question about the expiration of registration. I just completed my registration and it's showing that it's expiring at the end of 2024, which is not quite kind of what we expected. There are quite a few questions about the community impact fee, which scenarios are subject to the fee, given the variations in how rentals are registered with the Commonwealth and the town. For instance, if a property owner has a home and a cottage on the same property, could that be subject to the community impact fee if they do not themselves live on the property? But there are many things like that. Also in the registration process, there are questions that could be important later on in the management of short-term rental permissions, such as when the short-term rental started, that it's not clear how to answer. So on net, I'd like to recommend that it needs to be really clear as publicity is done about, hey, people need to get these STRs registered. First, where to go to get answers to new questions. It sounds like the health department. And I would, by the way, second the notion that it seems strange that the health department would be burdened with this. But moreover, once policy questions are decided, there needs to be a quick effort to get the online FAQ information updated to reduce the burden on the health department and GovOS and anybody else who's in the line of fire for STR auto questions. So those are the major things I wanted to raise.
Okay.
Also net of
Hey,
the rather passionate discussion in, yep. Am I out of time?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you. Kathy Baird?
Hi, just quickly, thanks, Rebecca, for outlining those things. One thing I just wanted to maybe answer the question that was brought up about why the Board of Health has this in their bailiwick, and I think it's the state legislation, the enabling legislation, puts it into that organization. So I don't know that there's any choice on the town's part on who administers to it for whatever reason. That's where they put it. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Okay, now we will move on to the DPW facility update. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Here we go. Thanks for having us here tonight to present an update on the Public Works Facility Development Project. Eric, you can go to the next slide. I'll start with a quick agenda. I'll do introductions. I don't want to belabor some of these points because I know that this project, which has started really 6 years ago, there's been a number of updates for the board over the years, but I think it's important to revisit some of these talking points, especially for the public and people that haven't been obviously part of the process or maybe didn't see previous presentations or maybe could use a reminder. We'll go through why is a facility needed, the benefits of a new facility, site selection, and why we're proposing to build at Shadbush Road. And then we'll give a project status update, primarily on everything we've worked on for the last 11 months, essentially since last special town meeting, and then a project timeline from today going forward. Go to the next slide. So, of course, Town of Nantucket DPW is the owner of the project. With me here tonight to present is John Como from Weston and Sampson, who is our design consultant. John's the project manager and lead architect on the project. Also on the project team are Kelly Cardosa from Avalon Consulting Group, who's leading our permitting charge. She has a lot of experience working on projects on Nantucket. She's been invaluable as we've moved this project forward. Additionally, our OPM is Vertex Companies. I'm sure it's a name you guys may recognize. It's John Lemieux, who's also the OPM for the Our Island Home project. And they're also another colleague of John's is the OPM on the Waite Drive seasonal housing project. And then additionally, as a sub-consultant for Weston and Sampson, TCI does the independent construction cost estimating. Go to the next slide. So, again, just kind of a refresher, why do we need a new facility? The original appropriation for this project was 2018. So like I said, it's kind of been a 6-year project already. And the town and the DPW conducted a feasibility study and then site alternative assessments, which led to the decision to move to Shadbush Road. We're very proud of the progress we've made in the last 12 months. Ultimately, to go even further back, the DPW was constructed in 1978. A couple of buildings were built and others were moved to the site. They are well past their useful life. And the biggest thing is that the facility is much undersized for our department today, certainly for our department of tomorrow. If you think of Nantucket in 1978, it's a far cry from today's Nantucket. The island's grown, our responsibilities have grown. But our facility has only minimally grown, and we're at the stage where further growth on the site is not attainable. Couple points to make: no indoor storage for fleet vehicles, equipment, or materials. Indoor workspaces are limited and congested. For example, we have an admin office that was built in 1998. So no, it's not, the oldest building on the island, but we have multiple open positions, and I have one desk left. I don't know how I could be fully staffed when I don't have the space to hire much-needed positions in our department. And then an overarching theme for all of our facilities: nothing's code compliant, certainly not energy efficient, and a lot of our spaces are being simultaneously used for unrelated activities. There's a lot of congestion and turnover, and it's kind of exhaustive for us to constantly work in a space that takes a lot of work before we can even get to our work. You go to the next slide. So a couple slides here in a row that have a lot of photos just to illustrate. I think a lot of people, and I've gotten this recently when folks have come out to the DPW and say, I didn't know you guys were over here. I go to drop my trash off. I thought you guys were over there. In the top left, you have our operations workshop, but it's not much of a workshop. It's also used for vehicle and equipment maintenance and storage at certain times of the year, but again, kind of going back to that simultaneous use. You can see in the middle, this was just taken the other day. That's our lawnmowers at the end of the season going in for some maintenance. But in the top right, we affectionately call this structure this old house. This was a former school building that was moved to the site in the late 70s. It's a 24 by 16 structure, so it is approximately 1/4 of the room that we're in right now. And it's the home of our facilities division. That division takes care of 40 or over 40 individual freestanding structures for the town of Nantucket. There's a table saw inside in the middle, and there's very little room to walk around it that you'll see on the next slide. To highlight the photo in the middle on the bottom with the trucks, the building on the right is our foreman's offices, and on the left is what we call the treehouse. The treehouse is lumber storage for our facilities crew. It's undersized for even that need, but on top of that, when there's inclement weather, and we're building boardwalks and benches and things like that, that space is used even though there's no electricity, there's no heat, there's certainly no ventilation, et cetera. So both of those buildings as well were once school classrooms that were then moved to the DPW. Our lines and signs foreman, Ray Sylvia, actually had school or had a class in the tree house, as we call it. I kind of joke when I say this, but it's kind of true that the whole DPW site is essentially a take it or leave it. It was take it from here and go leave it at the DPW. But nothing's changed, and certainly nothing's been done to bring these buildings up or enlarge them, which is ultimately probably the biggest goal of this project.
Were they the buildings behind Cyrus Pierce? Do you remember? Yeah, all right. I was in those.
Yeah,
it's a long time ago. Yeah, in the back.
And yeah, if anybody has, this will be a fairly lengthy conversation, or presentation. So if there's any questions along the way, feel free to just jump in, because you may forget what your question is by the time we get done. Sorry, go to the next slide. Another big reason for a new DPW is to get our fleet vehicles and equipment stored indoors. As you see here, we have millions of dollars worth of fleet vehicles, equipment, plows, spreaders, tons of stuff stored outside. I guess I would say the theme of these photos is rust, unreliability, very high replacement costs, and also no resale value, no trade-in value. It gets to the point where they're unusable, and we basically just beg people to take them and get rid of them to create a little more space that we can actually use. Next slide. Our DPW is also, unfortunately, kind of an unsafe and unhealthy work environment in general. Top left is our central fleet garage from the mezzanine. Very poor indoor air quality, both in that space and in other shops, especially our carpentry workshop areas like the treehouse that I mentioned, or this old house. There's no dust collection, so indoor air quality is certainly a major concern. In the top middle, you can see fluid storage that's really not up to code or other standards. On the top right, you can see that's also the inside of that yellow operations workshop. It's maybe a little hard to see in this photo, but there's operations equipment, tree maintenance equipment up against the wall. There's a bench for a workspace, But on the right, you can see that there's a pallet full of fluids stored there. And then on the left, you have benches that are being built over the winter in advance of the summer. Somehow those benches continually get run over and go missing. And so once again, we have kind of 3 or 4 different uses of this little space at the same time. The bottom right is the inside of this old house. Don't mistake that for a healthy work environment that's taken at a wide angle. It looks a lot more spacious than it certainly is. But there's a huge table saw in the middle, and there's really no room to walk around it, which is why those guys typically work outside around moving vehicles and equipment, and it's fairly dangerous. In the middle, on the bottom, is a shot from our lines and sign shop. That's Ray Sylvia's home over at 2 Fairgrounds. I don't know if people know this. We have over 7,000 signs on Nantucket, and they come every summer. We certainly get a lot of requests for more signage on bike paths and when there's curb cuts and other things. And for Ray to do what he does so well, he needs an effective space to do that. You can see here, it's almost impossible to walk through this space without tripping. Now, Ray knows it so intimately. I think he could probably do it with his eyes closed, but it's super congested. And on top of that, having Ray check in as a foreman in Nantucket every morning, get the crews out on the road, and then drive over to 2 Fairgrounds is incredibly inefficient, especially in summer when we're, going down Quaker or Pleasant through traffic, Mid-Island, through the Rotaries to 2 Fairgrounds, just so we can get something at 8 o'clock, an hour after work starts, and then head out. Especially if that thing's, that task may be in Nantucket, and he's heading all the way back before he can actually get started. And then on the bottom left is another shot of our central fleet garage. Again, taken a bit at a wide angle, but that's the sewer department's Vector truck. It's a little hard to see, but there's about 1 foot, maybe 2, of clearance on all sides. Just a really unsafe working environment, trip hazards, and things can get knocked over. And so, actually, Erica, you can go to the next slide. As I mentioned before about storage and a pallet just being out, in someone's workspace. We have extremely limited and makeshift storage spaces. To go back to the whole DPW is a take it or leave it. We have 9 individual tractor trailer, trailers and shipping containers on the site out of necessity because there is nowhere to store anything. In the very top right, there's a fairly new shipping container that came our way. And I kid you not when I say that there were employees fighting over what division was going to be able to use it. Because whoever doesn't get to use it is basically tripping over their own stuff all day. In the bottom left, there's 2 18-wheeler, tractor trailers right out in front of the DPW office. The 2 photos to the right show the inside of those trailers. One is used for tire storage. If you look closely just to the left and the right of that photo, there's tires in the other trailer and outside because there's still not enough room. And then on the right, or that middle photo on the bottom, again, more benches that were made in the off-season when we had the opportunity, nowhere to put them in the depths of the winter, and so they end up in here. There's a trailer, second photo from the right on the bottom. That's where we store our mowers. Our mowers are $15,000 to $20,000 a piece. We have 8 of them, so it's $140,000, $150,000 worth of equipment that goes in a trailer that doesn't have a door. It's blown over in a storm before. Thankfully, it wasn't full of mowers at the time. But it also is then the home of mice, rats, birds. It becomes inhabited by animals. It takes a ton of effort every spring to get them back up and running so we can get them out on the road once the weather turns. And then on the right, you can see another trailer with a very dilapidated shed next to it with stairs with no railings, because if there were railings, you wouldn't be able to open the doors. So kind of out of desperation, this is what we do, and we're happy to make the most of what we can. But really, with all of the value of our assets and how important it is for us to be efficient and serve this entire island community, storage is a very important factor or part of our facility in general. You can go to the next slide. And then lastly, we have very substandard employee facilities. It's poorly insulated, there's no air conditioning, heating is very ineffective and unreliable in the winter months. In the top left, you can see the men's room, and it's shared by about 30 employees. So if I'll go clockwise from top left around, the next photo is hand-me-down furniture from other departments, or literally from the take it or leave it. in the operations workshop, tucked in the corner. As I took this photo, there was a vehicle behind me getting serviced. This is where our crew meets every morning to sort out their tasks, figure out what we're doing for the day. And they also do safety trainings there. Really not a great facility for our employees and their development. Don't need to talk about the lockers, but right to the right of that is Dale Gary, our incredible town arborist. That's his office. Once again, you can see there's axes, there's a chainsaw on the floor, there's rakes. It's not much of an office. It's more of a storage closet with a chair and a desk that's covered in work supplies. Bottom right is a bit of a, I guess you can call a break room. It's where the time clock is, but very much undersized and just kind of falling apart. And then, not to be all doom and gloom, we make the most of what we have. So the middle photo on the bottom and the one on the left is from our Christmas party. We had a great Christmas party. It was a lot of fun. But even getting vehicles and equipment and pallets of fluids and things out to make room for a Christmas party is a big effort, and the same thing afterwards. So going back to that kind of too many uses for one undersized space. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And so to back up a little bit, this is an aerial view of our site. Surrounded in yellow, or outlined in yellow, is really the usable area. We have driveways that go out to Nantucket, north of the site, northeast of the site, and in the southeast, you can see the driveway that goes over to the landfill. This scattered layout of the site creates safety issues. You can see there's vehicles parked kind of all over the place. Our admin office is in the northwest. The big gray building in the southwest is our central fleet garage. And then there's the salt shed and our operations workshop and the treehouse and all these things kind of scattered about. This creates a situation where our crews, contractors that work for the town, solid waste haulers, and even members of the public drive through this facility all day long. As I mentioned, our carpentry efforts are largely done outside. They've said that it feels like they're working in the middle of the road. It's really just unsafe to have people even just walking from building to building all day long. And there's, like I said, vehicles and equipment and trailers getting loaded and all of that stuff happening. Just creates a lot of unnecessary conflict. In short, we've just entirely outgrown our facility. Actually, Erica, you can go to the next slide. I'll turn it over to John Como, our project manager for benefits of a new DPW facility.
Thank you, Drew. And thanks for having me. Actually, Eric, could you go back one slide back to the site? Thank you. I want to start here because I want to say a little bit about the site. It's very typical for a DPW site that over time has grown organically from, the highway barn building where they maintained vehicles. Over time, as a need arose, they solved it. This year, they built a new workshop, or they brought in an old building from the school to act as a storage building, and they bring in trailers, but then they push kind of out the boundaries of the site without thought to kind of comprehensive site circulation and so forth. And you often end up with a collection of buildings scattered about, parking scattered about, outdoor vehicles, storage, where you find room for it. This site in particular is kind of hemmed in by the landfill to the south and a number of wetland areas. So there's really nowhere for this site to grow. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of a new facility? It solves a lot of the issues that Drew just touched upon in his presentation about the existing facility. A new facility will bring all these vehicles that are sitting outside inside into a semi-heated space. So there's a number of benefits for that. Vehicle and equipment longevity, reliability, reduced maintenance time, reduced time, downtime for employees doing unnecessary maintenance on vehicles, moving vehicles around because they're not properly stored. Indoor air quality has improved tremendously because of codes that weren't in place when this building was originally constructed. It improves the health and safety of the employees of the DPW. For instance, now to deal with noxious fumes, they open the garage door. There's a fan in the wall that they turn on. It doesn't do very much. A new facility would have automated gas detection that would trigger ventilation, exhaust the space. So you're not subjecting DPW employees to an unsafe environment, internal environment. Next slide, please.
Actually, John, can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Erica, can you go back? There's a lot of little things too, like the very bottom, the benefit of additional multi-purpose and meeting spaces for the town. We overutilize this room, the training room upstairs, 131 Fairgrounds, for a lot of different meetings. We hold tree advisory committee. Parks and Rec is largely remote or hybrid, and cemetery commission meetings. They happen in our, what we call a conference room, but it's at the end of the hallway. It was a break room. It's got a kitchenette in it. When we hold meetings in the middle of the day, people come in to heat up their lunch, and everyone can hear everything we're talking about at all times. So there's no way for us to have private meetings, and it's very disruptive to other employees. Interestingly enough, very recently, we had a pre-bid conference for the new waste services agreement. This is a $150 million contract over the next 10 years, whatever it ends up being. We had contractors lined up all the way down the hallway, excuse me, listening to George Aronson's preamble before the site visit. Just kind of incredible how we were jammed in there like sardines. Really just not a professional facility. At a new facility, we'd also be able to not only hold proper meetings, but abutters meetings for transportation projects, other things. It has more use than I think a lot of people may realize. The last thing I'll say is, I think a lot of people have heard, speaking to 131 Pleasant, that was the ugliest building on island. It's at least sixth, because we have the first 5 at DPW. So anyways, John, you can
Thanks,
back at it.
Next slide, please. So we thought it might be informative to show some examples, photo examples of, these are all facilities that Weston and Sampson has designed, Department of Public Works facilities. On the top left is a multi-purpose room that serves as a muster room. It can serve as a training room as well. It could also serve as a meeting room. Going to counterclockwise, nice, clean, high bay maintenance areas with lifts, natural light, a pleasant work environment, a safe work environment. On the right is Burlington's DPW facility, a part of it. A new site would do a much better job of managing stormwater runoff, is environmentally more compliant than what we have now. Bottom left is indoor storage. So it's a large, open bay, flexible space. You can program it as you like. It's sized for 10% larger than the fleet size of about 60 vehicles that the department has now, which are currently mostly sitting outside and rusting. So at the end of the day, or at the end of their life, these vehicles are not rusting in place, that they have an extended life, and they actually have a resale value at the end. So you're saving millions of dollars, where a 6- and 10-wheel dump truck can cost $300,000 fully equipped. You're getting an extra 5 years out of that, and over the course of the life of the facility, you're saving millions of dollars. A new facility, like bottom right, would have a solar-ready roof that can, at least with the current Inflation Reduction Act, the town can receive those benefits for purchasing, or get the rebates for purchasing solar panels for their building. Additional energy produced could be stored and then sold back to the utility with battery storage on site. Next slide. More examples of some interior shots of, on the top left, vehicle maintenance has overhead fluid distribution reels. Again, natural light and indoor air quality is improved tremendously. Mezzanine storage space, which is safe. It's currently was built in place, I believe, by the DPW staff. On the right is a vehicle wash bay. That also is important for extending the life of the fleet. Washing in a responsible and environmentally responsible way, the vehicle, so runoff is captured and treated before discharged. Another example of a large kind of muster meeting room, vehicle storage garage, and then in juxtaposition to the slide that Drew showed earlier, a kind of rational, safe, and code-compliant fluid storage room. Next slide, please. Other benefits include, energy efficiency. This building is quite large. It's 63,000 square feet. There isn't natural gas on the island, and it lends itself very well to geothermal. Geothermal can get rebates from the utilities, so you can get government and utility rebates for making good sustainability decisions. Some of these are mandated by energy code, but some are also elective. So we're going to decide, and work with the town to, and the sustainability director in town to kind of work to get the best rebates and cost effectiveness for the facility. Next slide, please. Turn it back to Drew for the site selection. Why Shadbush?
Thanks, John. So going back to that 2018 annual town meeting appropriation, after that, the town and Weston and Sampson conducted a feasibility study to evaluate the viability of building the necessary facility at the current location. As a result of this study, it became evident that alternative sites should be assessed for locating or for potentially relocating the DPW. 10 Sun Island Road and 1 Shadbush Road were evaluated as part of that assessment. This analysis concluded that both 10 Sun Island and 1 Shadbush Road, those locations were significantly better suited to support a new modern DPW facility. However, market rate lease payments that the town would be required to pay to the Nantucket Memorial Airport eliminated 10 Sun Island Road as a practical alternative, and thus 1 Shadbush Road was chosen as the site for the proposed new DPW facility in early 2023. It's worth noting that while we're on this slide, the majority of the current DPW site sits at elevation 8, the same elevation as the intersection of Union Street and Francis Street, not too far from Washington Street, which is often flooded. This map shows the DPW site in Nantucket being flooded at least once every single year in 2070. That's based on current conservative projections. The responsible thing to do, if we're going to put this much money into such an important municipal facility, is to build it in a resilient location or build the current site up in order to make it resilient. So while I cannot stress this enough, we are not moving because of sea level rise and coastal inundation projections, but it would be irresponsible to ignore that entirely and not consider the cost implications. You can go to the next slide. So as far as the 188 Nantucket Road site, there's certainly a lot of limitations. As we highlighted earlier in that figure of the site that was kind of outlined in yellow, it's the size and shape of the available land is not suitable for the facility that's truly needed. You'll see on the next slide, anything we propose to do there would require us building in wetlands buffer zones, which are actually recently updated as part of our local wetlands regulations. It doesn't really accommodate the necessary growth of the facility to better serve Nantucket. All of that also comes at a significant additional cost to rebuild on the current site. Like I said, the responsible planning and design efforts would require that the site and Nantucket Road be raised. All existing utilities and infrastructure would need to be reconstructed. And building on our current site that's already kind of overcrowded would require temporary facilities during construction, which is estimated to be 2 years. I'm not sure exactly where we would even achieve that. And relocating something like Central Fleet that has, in addition to the fluids, but vehicle lifts and other specialized equipment is, I'm not going to say impossible, but extremely difficult. As we're finding out when we get into a lot of these different projects, town land is kind of hard to come by. It also comes at, the temporary facilities come at a very, very high cost. And again, these costs are not, would not be required at 1 Shadbush. Again, building into the wetlands buffer zones would require wetlands mitigation and enhancement and potential site cleanup costs. Anything you touch, you got to address it as part of the project. A couple last little things to note. Just a reminder, we're located in the Nantucket Harbor Watershed Protection Zone B and immediately adjacent to Long Pond. Staying at 188 Nantucket also does not improve our proximity or our response time to most of the island. if we were to rebuild at the 188 Nantucket Road site, it also does not allow for the very few useful buildings that still have some life in them to be repurposed, whether that be for solid waste or relocating the NRTA maintenance garage in the interim. And then lastly, it absolutely, and going back to the temporary facilities discussion, it would immensely disrupt our daily operations throughout construction. So in 2 years of us being inhibited, I don't think would be well received by anybody that lives, works, and visits here. The big takeaway is that rebuilding at 188 Nantucket would yield a lesser facility at a higher cost. We would pay more and get less for it. You can go to the next slide, Erica. This is a little visual of, at a minimum, the extents of the Nantucket Road and site areas that would need to be raised. Like I mentioned, this is almost all at elevation 8. Some of it's actually a little lower. This is a considerable area to bring in fill, build it up to the elevation needed. And it's a little hard to see in this slide. It'll be illustrated better on the next, but there's wetlands literally all around us in the landfill to the south. I've talked to John and other members of our design team. When we talk about raising the site, we're not talking literally just vertical upwards. You're almost talking, you're really talking about filling in wetlands. And as we know, not only, it's at least a permitting nightmare, if not entirely unfeasible. Erica, you can go to the next slide. So this is from the town's GIS, and these are mass DEP GIS layers that show the mapped wetlands around the current DPW site. So the brown buildings in the middle are the scattered buildings on our site. The light bluish green, light green, dark green areas are all DEP mapped wetlands. As you can see next to our central fleet garage, kind of in the southwest, the wetlands come right up to the back of the building. I would not be the least bit surprised if behind the operations workshop and foreman's office and the treehouse, if we had a wetland scientist map that the green area kind of to the right, northeast of those buildings would be larger than currently is mapped. And of course, there's no green to the south because that's the landfill. So really just highlights the inability to grow outwards, and we most certainly can't grow inwards. As far as coastal resiliency and the right way to plan and design these projects, the absolute last thing we want to do is look back in 20, 30, or 40 years and wonder why the heck we did what we did. Why did we not do this? Why did we not do that? We wasted all this money. And we're very much moving forward with this project with the future in mind and making smart decisions. Erica, you can go to the next slide. But as part of the site selection and analysis of the 3 locations, the Weston and Sampson team did put together some concept layouts. As you see here, it's kind of a haphazard, not haphazard, but an inefficient layout of the building. It is smaller than what we're proposing out of necessity and inability to make this any bigger. It may be a little hard to see here because it's a projector on the screen, but there's incredibly poor circulation, driving and otherwise, like around the building. And then it actually does limit our outdoor storage space. And make no mistake about it, there's plenty of materials that we do store outside: sand and gravel, roadway millings, riprap, crushed stone, curbing, brick, all that stuff. That does still stay outside. And so it really does not allow us the ability to build the facility we truly need. And we don't want to build a building that, again, in 10, 20 years, we say, oh my God, we're already outgrowing this space. That was irresponsible of us. Erica, you can go to the next slide. So as far as the 10 Sun Island site, this parcel is 6.2 acres. What we're currently on is 5.5 acres. It's only 0.7 acres larger. So similarly to 188 Nantucket, it's not really suitable for the facility that's truly needed. Most importantly, it's land owned by the Nantucket Memorial Airport. It would require a land lease at market rate. They've made that very clear to the town. Based on $1.03 per square foot, that equates $14 million over the next 50 years, which is a very conservative estimate from 2023, and it's not adjusted for inflation. So that would be the $1.03 holding true for the next 50 years, which I find very hard to believe would be the case. Adjusted for 2.5% inflation. The total lease payments would exceed 22 million. And I put an asterisk here just to remind myself to mention that if the initial lease payment was $1.55 per square foot, and I think Tracy actually just mentioned as part of the yard sale program that land is kind of typically going at $2 a square foot. If it started at $1.55 per square foot and then adjusted for 2.5% inflation over 50 years, we're looking at a total of $33 million in lease payments to the airport. A couple little things in addition to that. It would be located off Nobody Farm Road. I don't think I need to explain to anybody that it probably would not be well received to be adding vehicle traffic to Nobody Farm Road. We have 49 positions at the DPW, so that's about at least 100 trips per day, just people going to and from work. Never mind our day-to-day operations, multiple trips back and forth in between different activities and kind of switching gears from one task to the next. It was laid out to have a driveway out to Milestone Road, but that would require reconstruction of the Delta fields. So you'll see on the next slide, the driveway basically goes through one of the baseball fields, and readjusting the site would be quite costly. And then lastly, this site being west of the airport is in the Zone 2 Wellhead Protection District. So from a geothermal standpoint and other environmental, water quality reasons, certainly not ideal to be located in that protection district. Erica's already on the next slide. Thank you. Nope. I was saying you beat me to it. Thanks. Again, we did do a conceptual layout of this site. Similarly to 188 Nantucket, although this is a nice rectangle and a little bit cleaner, you can see there are some circulation challenges. There's a lot of arrows going on this site. If you worked clockwise from the entrance, which is in the southwest of this site, vehicles would go through the parking lot, past the fuel island, around the building into kind of a courtyard area and be a little bit landlocked. Down in that bottom area, below the purple square to the right of the green square, there would be a ton of vehicles constantly in conflict with one another, whether it's picking up materials from those storage bins, going in and out of the workshops, or going in and out of the central fleet garage. Is just very congested. Additionally, on the north side of the building, there's a canopy, but it's limited in order to accommodate the fuel island and have proper clearance for vehicles to circulate around the building. In the northeast, it's gray. It might be a little bit tough to see, but that's the salt shed. So vehicles would have to come in either off Milestone Road, down a long driveway to the salt shed, or come into the facility and basically travel all the way through the facility to get loaded up with salt during a snow and ice event. Very much an inefficient layout, and would, again, come with a much greater cost than what we're currently proposing. Go to the next slide. So, why the Shadbush Road site? I don't want to get into limitations because there really are none. There's a lot of benefits to moving to One Shadbush Road. It's a 27-acre parcel. It is town-owned. We wouldn't pay lease on it or lease payments on it. It's undeveloped. The construction costs for developing the site are substantially lower than anywhere else. It's really just clearing and grubbing, and then it's a blank slate ready to be built on. The other big benefit of this is pretty much the whole site would be at elevation 50. Again, Nantucket is currently at elevation 8, maybe 10 at the most up at our office building. We are first responders. I know people typically just think of police and fire, but when there are natural disasters, we respond. We're out on the road, snow plowing, responding to downed trees, floods, other things. It is paramount that we design a facility in a location that not only increases efficiency and all of these other things, but that is resilient and allows us to respond. We respond many times with police, with fire. And so, being where we're proposing to be located here and at this elevation is just about ideal. Again, it's centrally located off of Milestone Road, I'm sorry. So to give people an idea of where this is, if you're not familiar, you would go down Milestone Road, turn on Bunker Road. In the very northwest of the site, under the number 1 on the screen, is the VFW. So you would go past the VFW, turn left, head past Strang, and then down at the bottom of the screen there is community sailing. and the new Harbor Master building. And then at the end of the cul-de-sac, exactly, Erica, is where the driveway would enter. You know, additionally, this is outside of coastal flooding areas, especially up at elevation 50. It's outside the Zone 2 wellhead protection district. We would be able to achieve all on-site mitigation for satisfying natural heritage conditions, and I'll get into permitting in a little bit. And more than anything, we'd be able to continue operations at our existing facility until a new one's built. No disruption to our current operations and what we do all day, every day. It's not bulleted here, but I also think it's important to note that there's a real big benefit to this site being on the major trucking route. When we get deliveries, currently big trucks get off the boat, they get into the rotary, and then go past Stop and Shop, up Prospect and out to Nantucket. They obviously don't take Cliff Road. So it actually creates more heavy traffic through a very congested and busy Mid-Island area. In addition to that, Mass DOT is currently working on 4 projects on Milestone Road to enhance that corridor, specifically from the rotary to Bunker Road. The first of which is the Pulpus at Milestone intersection work that we actually expect to be starting pretty soon. Subsequently, Mass DOT is planning to do rotary improvements at Milestone and Old South, and then potentially a rotary installation at Nobody Farm. And lastly, widening of Milestone Road from the rotary out to Bunker Road. So again, really no better place for the DPW to be, especially in the industrial park with contractors we work with utility companies we work with. I think simply put, we just really fit in the neighborhood here. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And John's going to walk us through the project status update.
Okay, thanks, Drew. So when we started schematic design, we actually started with a review and confirmation of a program that was developed in the original study in 2018. Had a few different DPW directors. Drew's taken over. We met with Drew beginning of the year and his staff with Charlie and with Paul and others, interviewed staff and refined that program. So what we ended up with was a program with every space identified, offices for administrative staff, workshop spaces, and then we worked to determine the right size for those. We developed room data sheets for each space in the building, which were the building blocks of the floor plan that we put together in the schematic design phase. We had our engineering staff come out, do geotechnical investigation of the site. It's a great site. There's nothing but sand there, and it's what we expected, but we found out that that's the case. We did a survey. We moved into kind of site plan, conceptual layouts. We worked on a number of those and came up with the right location for the building, circulation, and placement of other site amenities such as the fuel island and material storage bins. At the end, we put a package together which included site civil plans, architectural plans, floor plans, elevations, building sections, industrial equipment plans showing all the lifts and equipment that's required in a DPW facility, what would be moved over from the existing and what would be required to be purchased as part of a new facility, and gave that to our independent cost estimator, and they returned a cost estimate based on that. Now, that's a schematic design estimate. There's still a lot of assumptions and contingencies in there. That would get further refined as the design progresses. Next slide, please. Again, steps that we've completed, just a list of those. We did the program review and confirmation, site development survey, geotech investigation, schematic design estimate. We completed the schematic design phase. We recently met with the Historic District Commission and had a preliminary review with them, which went, I thought, very well. We got some very valuable input and suggestions that we're working on now. Ongoing MIPA natural heritage permitting. Next slide, please. To say this is the final concept that we started with, and I'll turn it over to Drew to talk about that.
Thanks, John. Yeah, this is where it kind of gets fun, right? As John mentioned, we looked at literally every position, their daily operational needs, space needs, and it was a lot of different little building blocks. We pushed them together came up with a size and then started looking at the layout. But this site plan, I think, really showcases the efficiency of what we're proposing. What you see in the yellow is employee facilities and administration offices down on the bottom. In the middle, the green rectangle is our workshops and also plumbing and fire protection and the geothermal heat source. And then the purple rectangle at the top is the central fleet garage. Next to that is the wash bay up at the top, the little square or rectangle. And then outside the white is just a knockdown pad for the heavy debris off of vehicles and equipment. And then the big kind of salmon color is the indoor vehicle storage, vehicle and equipment storage. And then in the very bottom left, you can see the salt shed. Next to the vehicle storage would be a canopy for stuff that can stay outside undercover, but not truly indoors. In the northeast and northwest corners, you see we'll have, we're proposing to have material storage. So that's your sand, gravel, riprap, crushed stone, all of that type of stuff. And having ample storage for that stuff to maintain all of the gravel roads and respond during emergencies is paramount. And right now, our ability to have that in stock on site is extremely limited. Obviously, we'd also have the fuel island on the east side. And I like to use this example when I explain to people kind of how much we enjoyed doing this process and how pleased we are with the result. So at the end of the workday, someone would drive down Shadbush Road, come into the site in the southwest corner. They go past the parking lot. They drive up the driveway. They drop off stuff at the workshops if need be. They fuel up. They stop by Central Fleet if you got a check engine light on. Otherwise, you wash your vehicle, you circulate around, and drop it off in the vehicle storage garage for overnight storage. In the morning, you load up and go. Additionally, I like the efficiency of where the salt shed is located during an emergency or snow and ice event. Vehicles come in, turn left through the first gate, immediately get loaded up, and go right back out on the road. So they don't need to drive through the depths of our facility to go reload and get back out on the road in an efficient, timely manner. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And this is where it gets even more fun. Again, those little building blocks, my office, Paul's office, Charlie's office, shared workspaces, conference rooms, we very carefully considered exactly what we need in this facility, what we should have, and also very much what we don't need, what we don't, want. And this was a really enjoyable effort to carefully, very thoughtfully review adjacencies. Who is where, who's next to what, not just in terms of office spaces, but where do employees come into the facility? Near the muster room, there's locker rooms there. You can work your way from the time clock, then back to your workshops. There's a hallway that runs the entire length of the building that connects the employee facilities, which is the orange area, and Central Fleet. Going back to my comments earlier about our facility being scattered and people walking outside and walking across a UPS truck that's coming in and a trailer, that's going out for some job. The beauty of this is most people can remain within the building in a safe in a safe location, but still interact with other divisions and parts of our department. So the yellow area in the bottom left would be the administration office area. The orange is employee facilities, including the muster room, which is that bigger room I was saying for public meetings, trainings, full departmental stuff. Right now, when I want to address my entire department, we just stand in the garage. We don't have a place to do some of the more formal things that we should be doing. The green areas in the middle, as I mentioned, are the workshops. So from left to right would be the facilities workshop. It's 2 garage bays. Next to that would be the lines and sign shop. There's a little room in the back for the vinyl graphics that we put on town vehicles and for Ray to print and make signs. The gray area in the middle is HVAC, plumbing, fire protection. The nice thing about where that's located, that gray area in the middle, is right in the middle of the facility. It creates really efficient energy usage for the heating and cooling of the facility. To the right of that area would be a Parks and Rec and tree workshop dedicated to that division. And then to the right of that would be an operations workshop. It's important for me to note, because it's not really highlighted here, but if you look very closely, there are stairs in each of those workshop areas. In the back half of all of those green areas would be a mezzanine. The mezzanine is a great place to store the materials, especially seasonal storage. We would have a hoist and trolley that runs above head. So if a truck pulls in, you can lift something up, or if it's on the ground, you can lift it up and put it up on the mezzanine for permanent, appropriate storage. It allows us to be more efficient. We have the tools and the materials and things that we need to do our job at our fingertips instead of constantly looking for it. Mezzanine space, while I'm on the topic, is generally very cost efficient. It adds useful square footage to your facility, but really at a low per square foot cost. So also in the central fleet garage, in addition to first floor tire and fluid storage and parts, there would be a mezzanine above the central fleet garage. So kind of on the left side, Erica, you can see the stairs. Yeah, kind of that whole area would also have a mezzanine. So that central fleet garage would have 4 bays, 2 of which are drive-through bays. These are designed to be long enough to bring the ladder truck from the fire department in, the sewer department's Vector truck, which I showed earlier can barely fit in our current facility. We would most definitely set this up so that we have purpose-built spaces. So in the workshops and in central fleet garage, if you're doing a tire rotation or tire, replacement, you shouldn't be across the entire facility from where you store your tires and things like that. So it creates an opportunity where it's safer and much, much, much more efficient. On the right, that little light blue is a wash bay. It can fit 2 vehicles at the same time. We opted to not have the permanent kind of raised structures. Inside, we opted for movable, kind of mobile stairs that lock. But they're a far cry from what we do right now, which is get up on a wooden playground piece of equipment that we took the slide off of, and they climb up there and hose the vehicles down. And then lastly, the vehicle storage is a huge part of the square footage of this building, but would also have a mezzanine right where Erica was just moving her cursor on the bottom, but below that, that whole entire area would have a mezzanine for valuable storage. Again, seasonal storage, maybe the spreaders and other things, but each of those parking spaces in the vehicle storage garage, the truck's plow would be right in front of it year-round. So it's always there when you need it, but we're not trying to find places or which goes with what and what's the condition of this place, or I'm sorry, this plow when it comes August, September, and we're gearing up for snow and ice. The mezzanine storage is something that's just incredibly valuable. And I forgot to mention this earlier when I was talking about our limited makeshift storage, but I always like to give this example of how limited our storage is and what a disservice it does to our operations. We have an incredible program of providing beach wheelchairs to residents and visitors throughout the summer. We leave 2 at jetties, and otherwise we'll deliver it to a beach on demand. We'll bring it to your house. In the winter, we store those in the bathroom at Dionis Beach and in the bathroom at Tom Nevers. Before we lock them up for the winter, we put them in there, and then we come back in the spring. So it takes about a day to get these beach wheelchairs to them. Their winter storage, kind of hibernation locations, and then it takes a day to go pick them up in the spring, which is incredibly inefficient. It's not great for the bathrooms, it's not great for the beach wheelchairs, but it's certainly better than leaving them outside. So the thought of having places to store extremely valuable and high cost items like that would just be incredible. So anyways, we're very, very pleased at the adjacencies and how this facility came out, both outside and inside. Erica, you can go to the next slide.
This is a chart that shows the DPW for Nantucket, the proposed size of the facility, kind of relative to other communities' DPW. And it's really a kind of based, the size is a factor of number of employees and number of vehicles. That's the main driver of the size. So you can see the green bar is number of vehicles. The blue bar is number of employees. It just kind of is a check for us to see that we're not too far below or above kind of the right size of the building. And this so far we're right on target. Next slide, please. Continuing on with this status update, and I mentioned the HDC review in August. These were an example of some of the boards that we put together for them. We're starting to now model the building, look at fenestration, arrangement of building elements, entryways, and looking at building materials. Again, we had a great presentation with 5 members of the HDC, and we're going to meet with them again in a few months. Next slide, please. More elevational images from that presentation. This kind of shows the overall size of the facility. So when you look at the south elevation, that's what you at the bottom. That's what you'll see as you're driving in. The portion of the building to the right, the low kind of roofed building, is the admin and employee facility building, and then on the left is the exit way for the vehicle storage garage. But then behind that is the majority of the square footage, the majority of the building, which is kind of tucked behind. So it doesn't, you don't see all of the facilities kind of hidden behind the front building mass. Next slide, please. And everyone's favorite topic. Do you want to take this, Joe, or do you want me to talk about?
Sure. Yeah,
So I could just say we did an independent cost estimate. We had a lot of contingencies in there. We factored in the cost of building on the island, unfortunately, which is I think we came up with 20% at this point. And then when we looked at it, right now we're at 67 million. We haven't started to look at cost value engineering yet, but this is the schematic design starting point.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think there was a great slide previously that showed the graph of the size of our proposed facility in comparison to other municipalities. Again, our process was evaluate every position, evaluate every function, build what we think we need, and then afterwards, we then looked back and said, basically, are we crazy? Is this too big or is this too small? And I know that a lot of people may think 63,000 square feet, that's incredible, that's huge. Yeah, it's a good sized building, but there's a lot of data to support that that's exactly what we need. We are also talking about a facility that would serve this island community for 50 to 75 years. So again, we're certainly not going into this process thinking, get what we need now and we'll outgrow it in 5 or 10 years, no big deal. That would be very much not prudent of us. So the breakdown here is essentially civil site work for 1 Shadbush Road is about $9.3 million. That includes utility work and roadway improvements on Industry Road and Shadbush Road. The salt shed itself would be about $1.5 million. Fuel Island, $1.3 million. And the new building itself, the 63,000 square feet that we've outlined, would be $55.6 million. Again, to John's point, it's a very preliminary cost estimate. A couple things we haven't spent a ton of time on yet are the value engineering, other ways that we can look into saving money. It was kind of build it out, see where we're at, and then it will be refined as part of the design development process, which is forthcoming. We also, as far as the HDC, we got a lot of really, really positive comments on the facility, its function, but also its aesthetics. But we wanted to get kind of their take on the facility before we moved too far forward on some things that were less important to us. We're primarily focused on a building and a facility that functions. I think it'll just so happen to look really nice as well. But we all got a lot of really good feedback. So as part of design development, we will refine these costs as we further a lot of the details about the facility. I think it's also worth noting, and I know I talked a lot earlier about additional costs at 188 Nantucket Road and 10 Sun Island Road, but they're kind of outlined here. It's probably in the range of 15 to 17 and potentially more at Sun Island, $1 million more than if we were to build this at 1 Shadbush Road. 1 Shadbush doesn't come with the additional costs that the other 2 sites do. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember, because if you hate $67 million, I'm sure you hate $82 or $85 million a little bit more, because I certainly do. You can go to the next slide. So I'll touch on permitting pretty quickly. I know the board's certainly heard this a couple times over the last 6 or 7 months. But this is a 27-acre site. It is priority habitat for Lepidoptera, which is a protected moth species. Thus, natural heritage requires a 2-to-1 mitigation requirement. So in short, we can build 1/3 of this site, or build on 1/3 of this site, and the other 2/3 would go into a conservation restriction. One thing that we are actively working on in discussions with natural heritage is essentially getting extra credit for those 18 acres. We've had very open conversations about the challenges Nantucket faces in terms of our open space and not getting credit for Conservation Foundation, Land Bank, other entities, and that we're technically shrinking every year. And a lot of projects, many town projects, will require mitigation. So essentially it was first proposed, and Natural Heritage would say basically you can build 9 acres, the other 18 acres goes into a CR, don't look at it, don't touch it, and you're good. We've proposed that if we do land management on it, we'll get another 18 acres of credit. That will allow the town to further the Our Island Home Project, Coastal Resilience Plan projects, even things like the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. There are sewer extensions and other utility projects that are in priority habitat. And this allows us to develop a list and get essentially, like I said, that extra credit that can be used in the future to allow some of those other projects. So it's a really good opportunity. And Kelly from Avalon has been spearheading that effort, which is great for the town, not just for this project, but a lot of projects. You go to the next slide.
So they're giving you extra credit. So you would normally need 18 acres. They're giving you another 18, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Make sure my math is right.
Yeah, and on that slide, it did. They're very particular about where your mitigation is and what your mitigation is for. So if we were to do something in a coastal dune resource and mitigate using upland, habitat, then you wouldn't get that 1-to-1 ratio. You might get kind of partial credit, but it's been really positive, the conversations we've had with Natural Heritage, because I think, the town has seen it as part of the solar project. We're seeing it as part of this project. It's just going to keep coming up. And we've got to find a way to get ahead of these types of challenges every time we want to try to accomplish something as a community. So I just wanted to kind of highlight what would this look like on the site, that 9 acres of usage. So the DPW site is outlined here in red. That's 7.9 acres, and then adjacent to it in yellow is 1.1 acres of undeveloped area. I will say we unfortunately got some bad news at the beginning of last week. The plan was for the Nantucket Hunting Association to build a shooting range jointly with us at this parcel, but they've decided to not proceed with the town in this joint development and project. So it does throw a wrench into our plans. Kelly from Avalon had the permitting paperwork and narrative and all that stuff ready to go. And so we, as a town, kind of need to figure out what we are going to use that 1.1 acres for. And actually, Erica, you can go to the next slide. And that's the reason we need to figure that out now is because of segmentation concerns, or plan to do something in the future if we're willing to wait 5 years. So segmentation, Kelly would certainly explain it much better than I, but essentially Natural Heritage does not allow you to do the bait and switch, which is I'm going to build this here and get my permit, and then halfway through that construction you say, actually, I'm going to do something over here. They want to look at everything holistically, and that's what they expect of municipalities and even private developers. So we need to approach them now with a plan, and if we don't have a plan for that secondary usage, then it's basically tied up for 5 years. Nothing can be done with it. Of course, the plan for the last 6 months was to develop this site jointly with the Hunting Association, but now we'll have to look into other potential uses. The town does have a lot of needs. So, working with the select board and town administration, we will have to have those conversations and identify what we're going to do, whether that's indoor-outdoor recreation, employee housing, future DPW expansion needs, even things like an impound lot or whatever. There's a lot of things that we just seem to not be able to find appropriate town land for. And so, we'll need to have those discussions before we file with MIPA and Natural Heritage. But our approach is basically to site all the developable areas such that all the DPW mitigation can occur on the one Chatbush site. And then we'll submit a permit application to allow for accommodation of whatever that secondary town or community need is adjacent to the DPW.
When does that MIPA get filed?
We were hoping to file already, and we're looking to file soon. So. It's not quite on the critical path yet, but you'll see on one of these upcoming slides, the plan is to have permits in hand, a low bid in hand, and then go to town meeting with a price and the ability to move forward so that we're not the next project that gets approved and then says, actually, I need more money. And then you have that kind of back and forth, and eventually you get less and pay more. And that's certainly what we're trying to avoid. So I would hope in the next, I don't know, couple weeks, maybe month or two, we have our MIPA permits filed. There's a 45-day notice period prior to filing. We will file those permits. It takes a number of months for them to review and get back. And then the town has to have the conversation with Natural Heritage about the conservation restriction, who's the landholder or the CR holder, discuss land management requirements. There's a lot of stuff to work out. And so we don't want that to be the thing that kills our progress on a project of this importance. So you can go to the next slide. John, you want to walk through next steps?
Sure. So we're ready to roll into this is a timeline, a proposed project schedule moving forward. We're moving into the next phase, which is design development and public outreach. We want to educate the public on the benefits of this new facility, why it's needed. Drew, I think, has already set up the project on the webpage for the town. We're looking for supplemental design funding in the spring. Completing the construction documents by the end of the summer, bidding it in the fall, and having a bid price in hand for a special town meeting in the fall of 2025. The anticipation is that it's 18 to 24-month construction schedule from award of contract to the low bidder.
Yeah, I think if we moved in fall 2027, this might be one of the most expeditiously done projects by the town, especially something of this magnitude. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And then, as John just mentioned, we do have a project webpage. I think Florencia is online to kind of give us a quick walkthrough of that. She's been fantastic in helping me develop a really beneficial webpage that we plan to update over the coming months, and we move through design development and have more to share with the community. Florencia?
Yeah. Hi, Drew. Thank you. Good evening, select board members. So I'll be very quick. I will share my screen, which I think that you're all looking at right now, right? Sure.
No.
Erica, I am trying to.
Here, I'll bring it up.
Can you? Okay.
Hold on.
Okay, yeah, great. So you can just sit there for a second. So the need for new DPW facility webpage is divided into 3 sections. If you go down a little bit, scroll down a little bit, you will see the current DPW facility and its challenges. Like it was explained in this very lengthy presentation. I will not add to what Drew and others have said. But for people interested in learning more about the current facility, please visit that page. And then the 2 other sections are where we are at the moment, things that are being done now with the purpose of having a new DPW facility, and what we hope will be the new DPW facility. So we just started this website. We'll be adding information to it, but in each of these dedicated pages, you will find timelines. So on the current DPW facility, the process for that we are at the moment, and then if everything happens like we hope, how long will it be until the new DPW facility is available for the DPW team. So we encourage the community to visit this page. It can be accessed through nantucket-ma.gov/DPW campus. The QR code shared here, it's on the town website. If people visit the DPW webpage, they will find it on the left side, our engage page. So multiple places where the community can go to learn more about this project. And they can also subscribe. So if you scroll down right there, So you can sign up for notifications, and this is our Engage website. People interested in learning more, not only about this project, but any other project or initiative that town departments are working on, are encouraged to sign up here. So just name an email is enough, and you'll be getting emails when we update these pages with news and updates. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Lorente. Yeah, I think the website is a really good tool to really cover where we're at now, right now as a facility, what we're working on, and then what we're proposing. And ultimately, I really, truly hope that the public looks at this as their facility. This is a facility that is desperately needed so we can better serve the community, respond better to the needs of the community. And so we want people to be involved in the process. If anyone has questions and suggestions and things like that, hopefully they get those answers through the website and enable them to stay up to date with the project and remain involved. So at this time, if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to continue talking, as if I haven't done that enough.
Any questions from the board? No? Thanks, Drew. Very comprehensive.
Bored you to death.
No, not at all. I was actually
Thanks.
fascinated, and I've been involved all along. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, terrific. Okay. Libby, do you guys want to say something? Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Steve Holgate, for the record, President of the Nantucket Hunting Association. I just wanted to let a lot of community members know, a lot of people may not realize that this is the same site that the previously approved and partially permitted shooting range project was slated for. Some people think that that project, since it was approved at town meeting, they had already been half constructed or whatever, and they're surprised when they find out there isn't one. And I just want to explain to them where this project went and why. I mean, Drew's presentation explained where the town's priorities went. Obviously, the town, for the reasons you saw, has decided that the DPW compound replacement takes priority over shooting range, at least for this site. I do want to let the supporters of the shooting range project know that the town did offer a shared site concept, which we met with them numerous times over many months, many hours. I appreciate the town work group for working with us on that. I also want to thank my committee members for all the efforts they put in. So basically, the shared site concept included a 1.1 acre site for us to try to make a reduced scope shooting range project on, adjacent to the DPW project. There were many things to work out. We came up with a footprint. We came up with some buildings, layouts, floor plans, elevations, et cetera, that would squeeze as much of our old shooting range components into it as we could possibly get. So the support from the shooting range folks is very greatly appreciated. It's been 20+ years we've been working on this project. We had a planning board permit. We had gone through land court. We had spent over about $600,000 on consultants in defending the permit in court. We also had a National Heritage Endangered Species permit written, ready to go, with pre-approval from the staff at National Heritage. So we had gone a long, long way, and I want my supporters to know that. One of the other things that kind of had us walk away from the shared site, the main deal breaker, if you will, was we had to, support this project in full, which we were fully willing to do, get behind the DPW project, and likewise, the town was going to be behind our shooting range component of it, and a lot of the costs of the preliminary building, the ancillary equipment, the utilities, et cetera, road improvements were going to be on the town, so that was a big benefit to us. The deal breaker for us was the agreement. Just seemed like there was no guarantee we would ever be able to enter into a lease or break ground on a project. There was too many unknowns. We had to get behind and support this project in the beginning, and through the town meetings all the way to 25 and then possibly even 2027. And if for other reasons, the DPW project didn't happen, whether it did not get the voter approval or other changes happened along the way, we would not get our shooting range project. And we tried to get that change that we could continue on the 1.1 acre, regardless of where the DPW project went or how long the DPW project took. And that was never really granted, so we decided to walk away. And I just wanted to let everybody know that, the community to know that, and my supporters to know that. And thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And I'd like to comment, I really appreciate all the time and effort that was put in by the team that was meeting. We started in April, met weekly, really trying to bring this, but there was never, I think what the Hunting Association needed that the town couldn't provide was a way to separate the two projects, the timelines of the two projects. And given the permitting requirements of the site and so forth, we just couldn't, we couldn't separate that. And the Hunting Association felt that they couldn't bear the risk of the timeline or things changing again. And we really, this board was very much wanting this to work, and I'm personally sorry that it's not going to work out, because we really wanted to. We recognize that the shift on the use of that property was not ideal, and we really wanted to try to make it work in the way that we could. And I think it's unfortunate that it's not going to work out that way. And we recognize and understand your needs and your community's needs in terms of timelines that we couldn't guarantee. And that is the risk of being tied to municipal project and the timeline and the approval process for funding for our side of a joint project. So thanks to all of you for giving it the old college try. John, do you want to?
John Stover. I am a member of the Nantucket Hunting Association. And as I recall in our discussions, verbally or, well, it was pretty much all verbal, I asked specifically if after the CR, the permitting was done with the state, if we could have a start time after that. So whenever that date occurred, we would have a start time a year later, 2 years later, whatever you folks decided, and you said no to it, just to be clear.
So I have a question. I don't quite understand that. Yeah, so.
So I'll try to explain the misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And the town will not invoke the conservation restriction until the DPW facility was funded. Because if we had to redesign the site for a different municipal use, or that once you execute the CR, you're tied to the way you've designed it. And without town meeting approval for the DPW facility, we weren't going to execute the CR. So the timeline was dependent on town meeting approval for the funding. So it was always going to be tied to that, and that's where we were tied together on timeline jointly. And I apologize if there was a misunderstanding around that in the way it was communicated. But at no point was there our ability to say, if the DPW site funding doesn't happen, that the Hunting Association could move forward, because we would have to go back to redesign before we put the CR on. And so this was always going to kick the timeline down the road. And I'm sorry if there was misunderstanding, John, on that, honestly. And so.
Yeah, so I thought, so I might have misunderstood John then. I agree that we shouldn't be, that we should get this approved. But I thought misunderstood you maybe, John. I thought you were saying you might want more time after. You're not saying that. You say you want to do it. You'd have to come here to say. Yeah. Yeah, because I think the town, like, I'm disappointed that we haven't, I think we were really close. I'm disappointed we didn't get there.
We were that close.
Yeah, so that's.
And the stumbling block truly was not having a firm date to start. Now, that's kind of a misnomer, because the question that I thought, to this board was, once the CR is actually obtained, what's our start date after that? I don't care what the CR is for. Let's say, doesn't matter to me at all. DPW project, park fields, I don't care. Whatever that CR is, that's the time that we mark how much longer it is before we start. And your answer was no. No way, no how. That's not right.
I don't understand. I still don't understand what you mean. My understanding is if we got a CR, that we would do it, if we got a CR and we got the money approved, we would start building on the timeline we had, and you would start building on your timeline.
Madam Chair, may I add a little bit to this too?
I'm very confused.
Okay,
Yeah.
first of all, let's try to
right,
do this in a more organized fashion, because I don't mind a more informal conversation in the select board, but when we get to the point where we're arguing with each other in a
When there's
way, I
four
want
of
it to
us?
be a little
Okay.
more organized. So the timeline is, we design a DPW facility and a hunting association facility jointly. We go to MIPA and we get sort of a thumbs up on the plan. DPW facility goes to town meeting for funding. If it gets approved, we execute a CR, the hunting association and the DPW are constructed on the timeline. The problem is, if the DPW, this is where we ran into a sticking point. If town meeting does not approve the DPW facility, then we go back to the drawing board on the site design. And that is where your project is tied to whatever we do there. And we could not give you a time to start because we wouldn't know what other municipal use, what design, and we start that process over again. We revise the MIPA application. We get a thumbs up. We get funding for whatever alternative use it is from the municipality. Then we execute the CR, and then your project moves forward. So that, giving you guys a date certain to move forward is not possible at this time, because it is dependent on funding for whatever municipal purpose is on the 7.9 acres. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, Steve, it does, and I think what we were going with was, can't the town, since we had to come up and pick our footprint and lock into our footprint, then why couldn't the town lock into their footprint that works for the DPW, go ahead and file the MIPA and commit to that footprint? And then if the DPW did not get approved, you could use that same footprint for an alternate use. You would have to live with that footprint that was designed for the DPW. It may not be changeable, or you'd have to wait the 5 years to change it. But why couldn't you just put it in so that we can continue with our project instead of waiting another 5, 10 years? And then, I'm sorry, but we have had a lot of bad luck with delays and the rug being pulled out from underneath us. So we have a distrust. And waiting another 3, 5 years with putting our support behind everything and trying to raise funds and do fundraising for a shooting range that may never happen, and then the DPW takes a little delays, 2027, what other reason is going to be coming up that all of a sudden now there's another priority for the town? And I'm sorry, you can't have the shooting range at all now. And that was what we saw. That's what we saw this going down that road.
Yeah.
And that's why we stepped back and stepped away.
So to answer the question, and Drew is probably going to help me with this, that even if we lock in the outline of the area, the permitting depends on what you're putting there. For the same reasons we needed to know what your building design was and what you were going to do on the space. We cannot allow you to a part of the project to move forward without a permit for the entire site development because of the segmentation. So allowing the hunting association to move forward, even if we use the same square footage or the same plot, we would, by segmentation, we would not be allowed to redesign the use of our 7.9 acres for 5 years. And the town cannot subject ourselves to that delay in the same way. That's why we needed your stuff now, because otherwise you guys would have had to wait 5 years after we got the permit for ours. So it's confusing and complicated, but it's about closing doors for the municipal use on the site for a period of time that this board was not comfortable doing. Did I get that? Is there any clarification you need?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, just quickly, that I'm glad you brought up the segmentation, because that's a big part of it. I mentioned at the end that we now need to figure out what we're doing at the 1.1. But the conservation restriction is permanent in perpetuity, forever, and cannot be revised. And that is why the town is obviously very reluctant to put a CR on the parcel if the town is not 100% sure that it works for the town's need, whatever that need may be, if it's not a DPW, if it's not XYZ. So again, though, I think the process was, and kind of had to be, holistically. The parcel all needs to be permitted and designed and planned together, whether that's DPW, shooting range, recreation, a big swimming pool, whatever it is, it needs to be considered at this stage. So I think to John's question, it was, if we had a CR, when could you start? It could have been tomorrow after the CR, but the town was just not going to want to put a CR on a parcel if the town was not sure what the parcel was going to be used for. Because there is no going back. It is in perpetuity forever.
So I think the way, John, you've described this request is really not any commitment to a date certain in any way.
Correct.
So that's...
The only certainty is the amount of time after you actually get the permitting. Once that gets the thumbs up, how long will it take for us to be able to build a facility? That's my question. And that's what I asked, because that does give us some certainty that we're going to be able to start. Right now, the way it was left in the MOU that we were discussing for months, there's no timeline there for us to start at all, other than if this project goes forward, then other things will fall into place and our project would be able to go forward as well. There's always the possibility that it doesn't go well at town meeting and something else is going to happen, whatever that is. You may come back, I don't know, whatever you do. And, you have every right to do all of that. And I'm not trying to slow that down or stop it in my comment anyway. All I'm saying is that once that process is done and you actually get the approval of the town to go forward with a facility, whatever that facility is, you'll have the permits in hand, and I would like to be able to start sometime after that, some fixed time, a month, a year, 2, something reasonable, but at least let us have a firm start date relative to getting that permitting.
So the question is the permitting for what?
Yeah.
If
Well,
it's not the DPW facility, the clock starts all over again on how the town is going to use the 7.9 acres. So I was hearing you guys asking for some
A date
certainty, and what I made clear is we cannot offer certainty, and that's where things came to a
Speaking
dead
for
end.
myself, I would say I don't have a problem with that. The only certainty is that after the permitting is actually achieved, whatever it's for, we get a start date, some time period after that.
Madam Chair, am I missing something here? Because once there's a CR obtained for whatever, okay, they can start. That's the date, yes?
Correct.
Right.
And they were asking for certain years. They were talking at 2027 or some time period after 2027, and we could not commit to that.
To me, the specific date is when the CR is approved, whatever. And hopefully it would be for the best for the town and best for the hunting association, the earliest possible to have what's planned here and what's there planned approved to go forward. I'm,
May I make a comment? We would like this project to move forward. Somehow, we should be able to figure out how to do it. When two minds want to come together, they come together.
again, Madam Chair, am I missing something? I'm hearing the two minds are together. Are they not? We're saying that once the CR is approved, everything, the town will go ahead and you'll go ahead. So that's a specific date, right? Whatever that date is, it's a specific date when the CR is approved.
And it has no guaranteed timeline.
There's no guaranteed time.
That is correct. And that is, I was hearing a request for a guaranteed timeline for a start date, and I was clear that we cannot offer that. I'm hearing something a little different tonight from what I was hearing before.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
So-
Steve, yeah, the way Malcolm, I understand it is that if the DPW didn't go through, it was now a different usage. The town was gonna hold off on submitting the final MEPA or getting the final CR, and they would have to go back to National Heritage and change the usage. And then, until that happened, but the town could sit and decide, well, now we don't know what we want to use it for. It could take another 5 years to decide what they want to use it for before they go back to National Heritage and get that CR. So it was unknown when that CR would ever be put in place. And what are we supposed to do? Sit there on a dream, waiting another 20 years and not be able to raise funds and bring people on board? So that was why we walked away. But that's our hangup, is that there's no date that CR would ever happen.
Are the two points, should the 2 points be of a positive vote at town meeting and a CR? Like, I'm just asking.
Okay.
Because my concern is that some of your members will come to town meeting and vote against this, hoping to get this land, the whole piece of land. That's my concern. And so I think that we, from a political standpoint, we have to be aligned, because the town needs to do this. We can't continue to have the DPW out at the existing site. So in my view, if we're aligned and get that through and get your facility through, and it's done in 3 years, 4 years, whatever, what is it, 27? Isn't that the goal? Well, that was the goal, I thought, of the negotiation. So am I missing something?
That would work if the DPW went through it, and then, 2027 would be the timeframe.
The difficulty is if it doesn't go
If it
through.
doesn't go through, we're left with no
That is
project.
where we got stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
But we don't have a guarantee that this is gonna go through either. So I look at it like neither of us do, and so how, we can't, and if yours goes through, we're stuck for 5 years. So I think the goal is to get them both to go through. If I'm missing, am I right?
Hold on, Malcolm?
Yes, now, as a member of the association and as a select person, I'm sympathetic to both causes. It seems clear the town needs a range. The town needs a new facility. Now, it's probably not the ideal place, but there is no ideal place. There's no ideal place, period. So in the simple mind, we have to take what we have. So we have a potential of the two groups being together. And as my colleague says, I'm afraid it'll get voted down because a lot of people will be sympathetic to the association and think somehow they've had a bad deal. If we want something, then we need to work together and make sure this gets approved, and then you'll have your date. I mean, what else can I say? I have no more to say.
My only other comment.
Hold on, I'm gonna let John. John?
Yeah, my only other comment is.
No, Matt, wait, John.
You want me to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay. I was just going to say that I've worked through some difficult situations in contracting before, and one of the things we could do in a case like this is put more faith in the town, the Board of Select persons, to actually work this deal and actually achieve a date by, say, 2027. But we could use a phrase such as using your best efforts. This is what you want. It's what we want. Why can't we make this happen? It's what we want.
And my comment is, I think, we want, I think we want this to happen, Brooke wants this to happen, we all do. I think I think the fact that the town was going to pick up the tab on the road and utilities and everything was a good faith showing of that. I also believe that is extremely valuable, the town, in the town doing the legal work on some of the other stuff, which I know you guys have already spent, was a recognition for how much you've already spent. So when we've discussed it, that our recognition is that you have had a tough road. And so that, I think that's what we were trying to do, so.
Well, let me put it as clearly as I can, right? The outcome of not signing the MOU because you don't have a date certain means you don't have access to the land at all. So had you signed the MOU, we would be working on this together, and we would be trying our level best to move both projects forward simultaneously. I honestly did not understand. I understand not wanting to accept that it might not happen in a timely manner. And I explained that 6 ways from Sunday, why we cannot encumber that property, the 1.1 acres for you, until we have an approved use and funding for our property. And that timeline is uncertain, and I get it, but in the end, not accepting that reality closed the door for you guys in a way that I find very unfortunate. I would not have preferred to have it that way. But we could not provide you certainty that you wanted. But the end result here is that the opportunity's gone. That doesn't really make sense to me from your point of view, but that's the conclusion that you guys came to. I was frankly really surprised after all this time we spent really trying to make this work, that was the outcome. That's not what I wanted. I wouldn't have sat in meetings every Friday for 5 months if I weren't committed to making this happen for you guys. But I also, this board and the community cannot encumber that property in a way that gives you a timeline to move forward until we know what we're doing. And at the very least, signing the MOU starts the process, captures that site for you guys, even with the uncertainties. And it's a bit of a rock and a hard place, and I get it, but we are not, as Nat Lowell says, we're not making more dirt, and we have growing municipal demands, and the mitigation requirements for all, future town needs means that this is an incredibly valuable parcel of land that we need for really critical municipal purposes. So, I'm truly disappointed that this didn't end up in a place where we could work together. So, I lobbied really hard for you guys. So I think that's probably about all I can say tonight.
I think Drew,
is somebody online? Sorry.
Matt Peel. Do you want?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt Peel.
Hi, thank you. Well, I was going to say something, but sounds like this is kind of a done deal now, and unfortunately, they lost the opportunity. I'm not a member of the hunting association, but I just, I think Matt and Malcolm were really touching on some great points there. I don't think Brooke quite understands how the high regard that the hunting association is held in on this island. It didn't pass before because I think a lot of people felt that the hunting association was getting jerked around a little bit. And I think now it's going to have a even more difficult time passing because of that. And that's very unfortunate. It's hunters are extremely important on this island, whether people want to admit it or not. And the biggest hit this island could take is if the hunters took a year off and see what happens without the deer population control. I mean, it's they boycotted for a year. This island would be torn to pieces, and tick disease and Lyme disease would go through the roof. But it's very unfortunate. You guys could make a deal. So,
Thanks, Matt. Okay. Appreciate everything you've said, you guys. All right.
Can I have one more question? Can we not, is there not a path? Are we past a date? I guess it's a Drew question, or are we past? I know we put a date on it, and partly we put a date on it because, we need to move forward, so.
Yeah, that's the tough part, right? Like we, to Brooke and their point, we worked for almost 6 months every week trying to move this thing forward. We wanted to submit permits months ago. And we're kind of at the point where, like I said, I think I mentioned earlier, it's not quite on the critical path, but it's literally right around the corner. Our intent is to get something filed sooner than later. Otherwise, the decision will be made for us. It won't work with the timeline intended. We did it, not to belabor this point, but we did a cost estimate prior to schematic design, very rough, but it's pretty effective. How many dollars per square foot multiplied by the square footage? And it came out to $63.5 million. We refined the design, and a year later did the cost estimate, and it's $67.7 million. Every year we wait, it's going to cost $5 or $10 million more, and once again, the decision will be made for us. It'll be too expensive, it won't be justifiable. And so I don't want to speak for the board. It's kind of the, what is our plan? You guys are the Board of Public Works. So, in conversations with you previously, it was kind of decided that we had to put a date on this, and it was yes or no. We either move forward jointly, obviously with risk on both sides, or we don't. And unfortunately, to Brooke's point, it was really unfortunate. We spent a lot of time working on this, and I know that the board and Brooke and everyone at the DPW understands the importance of the hunting association, a safe shooting range, a facility for the youth and police and other things. But at some point, we may be in a situation where we get neither thing, and that's, I don't know, a risk that we, as a board, as a community, want to take. So that's just kind of my take on it. We can talk about this for the next 10 years, but then again, we'll all end up with nothing, So, and that's, at some point, it's go time. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to close the conversation. It's 8:30 and we're not done. We have a couple more agenda items. And I don't know where to go from here. I mean, so anyway, okay. Moving on. Libby, September 17th, special town meeting follow-up?
Yep. Erica, can you put up the little chart? So as we know, 9 of the 17 articles that were on the special town meeting warrant for September 17th were called. And I just did a little chart, which is what I typically do following the conclusion of a town meeting, to just indicate what the follow-up actions are and keep us on track with implementation as needed. So Article 1 was the select board sponsored zoning bylaw amendment for short-term rentals. It was not approved, and so there is no follow-up. I had a little note there. Does the board want to discuss this? Probably not tonight, but at some future time. Article 2 was a zoning bylaw amendment sponsored by a citizen. That also did not pass, no follow-up. 3 was not called, and the motion was not to approve anyway, so no action there. Article 4 was a fourth zoning bylaw amendment for short-term rentals, citizen-sponsored. It was not approved, no follow-up. Article 5 was a general bylaw amendment for short-term rentals sponsored by a citizen. That did pass, so that will be compiled by the town clerk, sent to the Attorney General, and will coordinate the update in the general code. 6, 7, 8, 9, well, I'll say 6 and 7 were not called and did not pass. 8 was not called, zoning bylaw amendment for demolition delay, sponsored by a citizen. That did pass, although it wasn't called, and so the town clerk and Plus will, since that's a zoning bylaw amendment, Plus is involved to send some documentation about public hearings and things to the AG, and we'll coordinate the updates with the code and mapping and all of that, if mapping is even needed. 9 was not called, that was a citizen zoning bylaw amendment. 10 was a zoning map change, town-sponsored. It did pass, go to the AG, and then town code updated. 11, 12, 13, 14, all citizen-sponsored, couple zoning map changes, couple zoning district map changes. None of that passed, so no follow-up. 13 was a sewer district map change, citizen-sponsored, not called and motion was negative, so didn't pass anyway. No follow-up. 16 was a citizen-sponsored home rule petition regarding the planning commission. That did pass, as we know, so the town clerk is in the process of preparing the necessary certified copy of the vote, and we will get that up to our legislative representatives for filing. And 17 was a real estate article relating to 81 Washington Street, citizen-sponsored. It wasn't called, and it didn't pass because it wasn't really a passing type of article, because the content of it can happen without an article, so we'll work on that.
Is this a time to comment on any of that if we'd like to? Yeah? Oh, good.
If you want
Yeah.
to.
No, just, there have been, I have talked to some of the various sides on the whole short-term rental thing. People are discouraged and et cetera about the entire thing. There was a bit of a challenge, put out to those groups to come together and do something. I'm not sure that, I hope they do. I hope that there's some talk, but my sense would be, unless there's a broad coalition that that Land and Water Council and put Nantucket Neighbors First and and Nantucket together, unless there's a broad coalition, and only one article at town meeting, I don't see any likelihood of anything passing. And so, I know Matt Peel during town meeting, offered to meet, and I know some other people did. I know there's a little bit of, I'm hearing through back channels that there's been a little bit of conversation, and I hope that they can come to something. It was very close. The issues that were sort of, that kept people from supporting it, I think were the residential requirement. I think there's, that was one that I think was tripping people up, and the A and the Y. But the more you look at, the accessory versus the yes, if it's in zoning, both of them bestow grandfathering rights. And so when both of them are kind of do the same thing if it's in zoning. In a bylaw, it's different, but I think that, and the other part that's interesting about the whole, so anyway, I hope they get together. The other part that's interesting is Grant Sanders had done some polling prior. He had done some surveys and polling and everything, and he got, through Facebook or however he does it. And what he came up with was exactly how the votes went, within almost percentage points. And so it was very clear from his polls that, the Land and Water Council holds, 50 to 54% of the vote, people follow them, and X amount of people, will follow someone else, and this and that. And when there was only a couple very small paths, which are probably still the same, that would have to happen. So it really, the incentive, if people want to solve this, is to come together with an article. And it has to just be one. That's my comments. And that's about the only one.
Madam Chair, yeah, I just want to say that I know it's kind of water under the bridge at this point, but the short-term rental subgroup that Malcolm and myself were on with Grant and Jim and Stephen and Charity and Matt, I thought went really well. And even though it wasn't a passage at town meeting, the process was good and it got people in the room and discussing things. And hopefully that whatever kind of filters out through that whole process can lead to some future collaboration, as Matt was just talking about.
So next week, we're going to look at the town meeting timeline. And I would say that is going to signal to the community what the window is for consensus to bring one article. I think that if we continue to have multiple articles on the warrant, the jockeying for position and for town meeting process is going to make it impossible to find the 2/3 that we need to get something done in the zoning bylaw. And I also think that I've said for quite some time that the fear of the thing you don't want happening, the likelihood that what you don't want will happen has to outweigh your willingness to compromise, one's willingness to compromise. And I think it's a little unfortunate that we spent as much, sort of collective time on this versus a lot of other really important town matters and concerns, and that it is now basically back in the hands of a judge. And the outcome of that may push people toward the middle to compromise. But as long as everybody's holding out to win at the ends of the spectrum, unless people who are just sick of talking about this show up and get that extra percentage that we need to get from 54% or 52% to 2/3, we're gonna be going around and around on this merry-go-round for a really long time, and that's I just don't think it's good for the community in the long run. So I really hope people will consider yielding pieces of their heart's desire.
Yeah, the other point on this is some people are attributing malice to one side or the other, or and sort of assuming something. And I think one of the good things is still some of that, but not as much. And I think that's one of the good things from that process, because people will say, this side doesn't care if they win, and this side doesn't care. They all care, and there's no winners if we can't solve something, because litigation is uncertain. It's expensive. It's uncertain. Eventually there'll be something will happen. That you can win a lawsuit, but you could still lose because the judge can declare something a certain way that will make what you wanted to have happen not happen. And so I think that there's, I still think there's a lot of, when people really stop blaming each other and or seeing something bad that doesn't really exist, I think there is a lot of reason. There's a lot of reason for people to come together on this, and I just hope they do. So,
Thanks, Matt. Libby, do you want to finally do your
sorry.
town manager report?
I could wait till next week if you want, or I can do it
Just
now.
get her done.
Okay, so it's in your packet, so you probably have very thoroughly read it by now. Just business as usual items, the follow-up on the town meeting, the prep. We're working on getting your strategic plan retreat for October 22nd ready, with lots of meetings in preparation for that, monthly town manager e-news. We're starting to get at it with the fiscal 26 budget and capital projects, planning for the annual town meeting and election, and continued follow-up from the 2024 annual town meeting, some of which you heard about tonight. We've got a lot of strategic and major initiatives underway. The Vineyard Wind turbine blade failure and the proposed vessel slowdown restrictions for right whales took a great deal of time of numerous staff all summer. So we're still kind of recovering from that. We have the Baxter Road Alternative Access Project. Sheep Pond Road is still out there as needing to be addressed and resolved. Our Island Home, that project is, if we thought the DPW facility review took some time tonight, we're going to have something similar for the new Our Island Home facility. And there is a lot of work to do there with outreach to abutters and things that doesn't necessarily have to happen with the DPW facility, although outreach is definitely needed. Long-term solid waste planning, our RFPs for the landfill are due tomorrow, and we have an internal work group that will be reviewing as required by Mass General Law for RFPs. We'll be reviewing those and giving recommendations to the board sometime this fall. You heard about the short-term registration program status tonight, the DPW facility tonight, weight drive seasonal housing we heard about last week. Some other planning items, I'm realizing I'm reading everyone, I guess I don't really need to do that. The Surfside Area Transportation Project, you've heard about that several times now, and that's well underway. PFAS issues are, of course, taking quite a lot of time, housing initiatives. There are many, many, many housing initiatives going on out there. Staffing and personnel management related, we've hired our Health and Human Services Director, which is Rocky, who is here tonight. We're still trying to get to our DEI situation. We know our director resigned some months ago, and our intent is to issue an RFP to help to engage a consultant to determine what we've done, what a forward path might be there, and that's just, we're trying to get at that. We've hired our veterans agent. Hiring for the deputy housing director is underway. We're really trying to hire a minute taker. Surprisingly, there aren't very many people out there who want to actually do that job. We're reevaluating our town engineer position, which we weren't able to fill with our most recent hiring process. And we have an ongoing professional development plan for staff in progress and being implemented. Meanwhile, we're doing lots of Mass Municipal Association webinars. I think some of you have done some of those. There's a Mass Municipal Managers Association annual fall conference coming up at the end of November, and we're determining if we're going to be able to get to that. Lots of real estate issues, and thank you, Tracy, managing to sit through. Thank you, Tracy. She's really on top of all of it. The town building complex exterior repairs, that was a pretty big project. Those are mostly complete. I think there's some winter work that's going to need to be done, but the exterior of the building looks much better than it did a year ago. And we're working with departments to develop their departmental monthly reports to the board. Next week you have DPW. And then lots of meetings are listed there. And I won't go through all of those. I attended the annual Nantucket Civic League's annual meeting on September 9th, and a couple of us went to a district court community engagement session last week, which was pretty interesting. I've met with the planning consultant who's working on the master plan. I think some of you have or will, and we're getting an update on that in October. And currently, Greg Tivnan, one of the assistant town managers, is at the ICMA annual conference, which is in Pittsburgh this year. So lots of stuff going on. That's it for town manager.
Thanks, Libby. And Erica was right that I jumped the gun early in the meeting to do the announcement that's listed here at the end of the agenda. And since I already said it, Val, did you want to say anything or ask questions? You would. It was a long time ago. So to reiterate that we have engaged cultural heritage partners to represent the town in several matters. One is the negotiations on the impact of the debris incident, the review of the Good Neighbor Agreement, and also the ongoing monitoring of making sure we're filing all the notifications, et cetera, for wind farms that are in the process of permitting. So they will be representing us on all those
To make sure
matters.
we don't lose our standing in any of that.
So can I make a couple comments?
Absolutely.
Okay. The blade failure in July is the first example of what we're going to expect from this aggressive industry. There was no oversight required in the permitting documents by any of the government agencies, which, in the first place, which is very irresponsible, and I think shows us where we are as a result. Fast forward, our state legislators have not advocated for us from Governor Healy on down and have yet to respond to this crisis in any meaningful way except for a lot of lip service. You all promised to keep us residents updated with all parties involved, but to date, I feel like we haven't been included in a lot of discussions that you've had, and I thought the last time I was here, we had sort of agreed to that. I personally do not want to negotiate for money to solve this mess, and your expert legal counsel has repeatedly told you that's the only thing that you can do, but that is not true. Communities have said no, and projects did not advance. My Article 78 from last spring's town meeting, while it was non-binding, resoundingly made it clear that the residents of Nantucket did not want the select board to negotiate without public input. I'm asking you to stand up and call for a moratorium and stop making any more deals without the public having a chance to weigh in and take part in these decisions. Best practices do not exist in this nascent industry, and I can't see how your expert counsel can make sure they're followed. This is a learn-as-we-go situation, which I know I keep saying, as we're the first in the country to be at this point. I would like to ask you now to represent us, the will of the people of Nantucket, who are the most impacted by this environmental damage, our future loss of jobs, potential health risks, instead of negotiating with these foreign entities that will move on and leave us cleaning up the detritus. I just read today in the Wall Street Journal that Vernova is already moving away from wind projects. What a surprise that is. How are we to believe they're going to care about us in the end and take care of us? Our financial assurances have already been waived by the government for 15 years. So who is going to be left cleaning up all of this mess? Vineyard Wind is really the person we have the agreement with, and GE Vernova is a subcontractor. In closing, I just would like to say this legal counsel is not an expert in this area. They're an expert in the Section 106 area. This is a pollution event. I would ask you to consider possibly talking to other attorneys before signing on any dotted line and having them represent us in all of these future disasters that are coming up. So please be in tune with our community. Listen to what we're telling you we want. We were assured that we would be informed before solutions were ratified by you publicly, and sadly, it appears that's not true.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you. But I guess it doesn't matter.
Veronica?
Oh, hi, sorry. It was the hand raising thing was a little complicated. I have a question. You guys are announcing that you are engaging cultural heritage partners for a broader scope of work. Some of it having nothing to do with the previous work and is much more environmental in nature. We've had a major pollution event. Have you spoken to other law firms? Is there a rule or a process where you put a request for proposal out, or at least consider more than one attorney? Because cultural heritage partners might be expertise in view sheds, but they're certainly not pollution attorneys.
So I can tell you that there is a part of the contract with Cultural Heritage Partners is a partnership with an environmental law firm whose expertise is in exactly these matters. So
Can
their
you tell us who
counsel-
that is?
The Weiche, WYCHE. They're out,
Okay,
they've done they've done a ton of environmental litigation work.
well, that's encouraging to see that you're going that route. And I hope that you're engaged with them separately and not through Heritage Partners, because it really just appears from all angles that Cultural Heritage Partners is very invested in making sure Nantucket toes the line on these projects. And it's very concerning so far. The other thing I wanted to say, and Brooke, I've emailed you many times. I've copied a lot of your select board members, as have other members of our organization. We want to help. We have tremendous amounts of information. We have read every word in these documents. And there's a lot of things happening that are not right by the federal government, by Bessie, by the state of Massachusetts. A lot of misinformation. And it's disheartening that you guys are moving forward with important decisions without at least, I understand you need to have executive sessions, but it doesn't make sense to me that there's no forum for you to get information about this from sources that are not GE Vernova or Cultural Heritage Partners.
Okay, thank you.
I look at this, I think that what we're dealing with now is, first off, we've brought KP Law into this substantially, and they went over, have gone over a lot of this, and, they are more engaged than they were, which has been helpful. I think the other thing is we are dealing with, sort of an event that happened, and what is it, there have been people that have been harmed, as the town has been harmed, there have been people who have been harmed, what is the best we can make out of that? I think the whole next step, we aren't there yet, I don't believe, we haven't decided I understand where the community is, I understand that, but I think that we are focused on we're moving at the speed of government, focused on what's in front of us right now. And I think so some of the things I talked earlier about, attributing malice to people, attributing, sort of motivation to people. I think people have to be careful assuming, that with what we're doing. But anyway. Is that a nice way to say it?
Well, I'm going to add that my priority in all the conversations that I'm having at the state and federal level are about ensuring that communities, Nantucket and communities like Nantucket, are afforded the protections that we need given this incident, that we're not part of the permitting process. And we are working very hard to ensure that the damage that we experienced as a result of this blade failure, that we are protected to the best of our ability, given the regulatory authorities that are actually responsible for this, of which we are not one, and we are doing our level best to have our voice heard at the state and federal level to ensure the protection of Nantucket with an industry that there's a policies at the state and federal level that we cannot stop. We can agree to disagree with members of the community who believe that we can, and we're doing everything we can via the channels that we have to do the best for this community. And I mean, that's as much as I can say at this point. There are people who won't believe that, who believe otherwise, and I don't know what to say to people, but I am not planning to spend a huge amount of community tax dollars chasing an effort that has a low likelihood of success. And that's what we're elected for. And the authority to make those decisions is invested in the five of us. And I can only assure the community we are doing our level best for you, despite what
I just
others
think
may
you're
say.
being misled.
Val, we can agree to disagree on that.
May I speak?
Sure.
I don't think we're being misled. And I think it's important that you understand that the agreement with cultural heritage doesn't go into the future. And it only goes as far as monitoring what's happening and dealing with the incident that happened last summer. That's essentially all they're doing for us right now. What happens in the future beyond that may be somebody else. I can't tell you that, but that's where it stops.
I guess I misunderstood what was being said. I thought there was a comment about having them help in future projects.
So I'll clarify that. There is ongoing work to monitor the Bowen process for other wind farms, and Cultural Heritage Partners is continuing that. They have been doing that work for us, and it's critical on an ongoing basis that we be monitoring and filing timely to maintain our right, which is part of the trouble we got in, as I understand it, the first go-around, is we were not doing that well, and now we're doing that. And so I think we need to leave, it's 9 PM, and I think we need to leave it at that tonight. And where are we? I think that's it, right? Any select board reports?
I'll do a quick one. CRAC met the other day and spent another meeting talking a lot of it was talking about zoning and how do we get the zoning changes that that were recommended, started in process, et cetera. But and there was some other resiliency things, but the other thing we're trying to do, which is kind of a follow-up to what Libby said, at the bottom of your of Zoom, there's a Zoom AI that's at the bottom. It says it'll do a transcript, and Zoom will actually write a transcript, and the transcripts are pretty good. You can have those transcripts be turned into different languages, and we've turned it on. We're trying to figure out how to do it. Leah has turned it on. Doug Rose is really good with computer stuff. He's agreed to look at it. We're trying to figure out, is there a way to do minutes through this or do summaries and then have the AI do a smaller summary? So I've got my fingers crossed that it does work, because we can't get a minute taker for that group either.
Yeah, this really needs to be centralized with IT, which they are already working on this. Different groups within the town shouldn't be out doing their own thing with this. Input that they have is great. And the transcript is good, and we've talked about using that as a base for minutes, but you need people to identify themselves because it doesn't pick up who they are. And there are other features of it that take either time for AI to learn, or they just aren't there yet. Do you want to add to that?
Well, and it's also not a transcript. It is not a verbatim word for word of a discussion. It is a summary. And so it summarizes the general discussion. It doesn't note votes. It doesn't say who took a vote, who seconded, how the motion went. It's a general summary. And so it's an interesting tool to add 2 minutes, or as Libby said, use as a base, but you really have to supplement it to make sure that they're in line with the open meeting law and the minute requirements for that.
Understood, and I think, but when you watch it online, it is getting people almost word for word. It's incredible. Like that's where I first saw it. I'm watching it, so I didn't even try to turn it on, but people were talking, and it was getting them almost word for word. So anyway, we'll see. I'm not sure, and I know IT is going to know way more than I do, and it's also changing weekly, monthly. So. I read about it, it's recognizing names, it's adding names, it's doing all sorts of stuff already a couple months later, so it's gonna be here probably before I'm gone. We will see.
Thanks, Matt. Tom?
Yeah, I was just going to say that when we went to the Mass Municipal Trade Show, that Libby and Greg were asking every single vendor there who had anything to do with tech, GovOS, et cetera, on what is coming. And it sounds like that eventually this will be coming, but also to Erica's point, like, was the Secretary of State's office going to say? And is Secretary Galvin going to be okay with that? So there's a lot, there's just yeah.
Yeah. Good to know IT's on it. So, okay. Want to get out of here?
I want to escape.
I won't make my comment.
Okay. Okay.
It's too late.
Okay. A motion to
Move to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.